This episode of Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Cometeer. Cometeer is the first coffee you melt to make. It's delicious quality coffee that's ready in seconds. Cometeer's freshly brewed coffee arrives flash frozen inside the world's first 100% curbside recyclable capsule. It's super simple to melt your way hot or iced coffees, lattes, and so much more. No machines or expensive equipment needed. It's simply incredible, fuss-free, mess-free coffee. I try to have coffee with every episode of a show that I record. It's just such a nice way to ease in and relax into the conversation. And it may be no surprise to a lot of the listeners out there, I can be a bit of a coffee snob. But what's so exciting to me about Cometeer is that it completely lowers the barrier to entry into fantastic coffee. All you need is either hot water or ice and you're good to go, and you're drinking awesome coffee. And trust me, some of the roasters that they offer are really legit. Cometeer brings you the best coffee on the planet. It's incredible, but don't just take my word for it. Experience it for yourself and try the coffee you melt to make, brewed exclusively in partnership with award-winning roasters. And we've got a special deal for you. Save $20 off your first order when you sign up at cometeer.com/sacred. That's COMETEER.com/sacred. And we thank Cometeer for sponsoring the podcast.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 187. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today, my friend?
I'm good. I'm feeling very, very productive. Did some filming for a video. I haven't made a video in a while, so it was nice to kind of like jump back into it. But because I use this, I film my videos in the same place I do the podcast. I had to position the camera in such a way that I had to move the mic to the other side of my desk. So it feels like something feels off today.
Yeah, your muscle memory is going to be a little off now.
Yeah.
That's okay. You'll get used to it.
Yeah.
You'll get into the swing of things, my friend. Well, welcome. Dustin Furman,
Hello.
executive producer of Last Stand Media. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. I noticed Chris has some Japanese on his shirt, which, I don't know, maybe he's a fucking hypocrite or something. Something like that, but... Other than Chris's displeasing shirt to a weeb like me, I'm not too bad. I just like got out of the shower, and so I think when this video starts, you see me going like this, and I was like, "Damn, right? You got me right as I was fixing things up."
Trying to get yourself. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sometimes we just jump into it. You know,
Yeah.
It's kind of like Joe Rogan. I've said before, the 2 times I did Rogan, both times it's just like the first time I did the show, he walked into the studio. I hadn't met him. I was hanging out with Jamie. And he just rolled in. He shook my hand. He's like, "Hey, man, nice to meet you. Welcome." He's like, "Ready to go?" And then we just started the show. It was like that, like literally 10 seconds. And then the second time I knew him a little better. So it was a little bit different. But, we got to have that Rogan-esque. Unless you're a Neil Young fan. I'm sorry. I listened to Harvest Moon for the last time on Spotify last night.
Dang it.
When I was working. I love that song. Because, of course, there's drama there as well. But I want to welcome everyone to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, our weekly PlayStation podcast, the world's biggest PlayStation podcast from the world's biggest video game Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. All thanks to you. You can get it 3 days early and ad-free by supporting us over there. You also get, I've been getting a lot of messages actually recently saying that I'm not, and I don't know, I don't like promoting very much, but that I'm not explicit enough in how much value you get on Patreon. And for just $1 a month, you get 2 episodes of Sacred Symbols plus every week. That's the starting point. And then you go up from there. The average person, most people are at the $5 level. And that's early ad-free access to all of the shows, video, audio, and all of that. But come join us. Submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas over there. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. Sacred Symbols Plus episodes recently have been awesome. We did the very first Sacred Symbols cross-defining Duke with the full casts. All about the Activision Blizzard deal. King, of course, as well. The Vince Ingenito episode has been doing awesome. People love that. We did one about unionization. Of course, our hot takes on the Activision stuff went up that way. We did a fantasy draft. We ranked the PS Plus collection games. Have one coming up shortly about Gran Turismo 7, another one. I have an interesting one. I won't say what website it's from, but I have a very frank, but I think friendly and useful conversation with me and the EIC of a progressive video game website. And that's going to go live soon. I have one all about faith and Christianity in games. Thank God the Dukes over at Defining Duke Ultimate did one about the NFT phenomenon, so I don't have to. Thank you so much for that. And of course, you can join us on Discord through Patreon and all the rest. Okay, guys, big news.
Mm-hmm.
Big news. Something we've been working on for a while.
Oh boy!
You'll remember, of course, what was it in September around Labor Day? We gathered in Pennsylvania for a live event, and we're going to do another live show, but it's going to be Sacred Symbols episode 200. It's going to be live in Richmond at the National, Richmond, Virginia, Saturday, April 30th. Openers, none other than Chris Raygun's Snark Tank podcast.
Yep.
It's going to be awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a live show. Sacred Symbols 200 will be live in Richmond, Virginia at the National. Tickets go on sale for patrons at any level on February 4th, and that pre-sale period will last until the 13th. After that, public tickets will follow shortly after. There will be VIP options and regular entrance options. We do want to be explicit that due to the regulations at the venue, you have to be either vaccinated or have a negative test before you come. We, of course, are a little more libertarian than that, but this is kind of the nature of working with any of these major venues.
Right.
So we're really happy to be doing this. So again, Sacred Symbols 200, ranking the 25 best PlayStation 4 games, live in Richmond, Virginia at the National, Saturday, April 30th, with Snark Tank opening. Tickets go on sale February 4th. Dustin.
Yes.
You and Ben have been toiling.
Mostly Ben.
Mostly Ben. That's true. But how? I like to give you credit, though.
Sure.
Ben doesn't need any credit.
We advise Ben and I. He's like, we have a little like mind trust where we bounce each other. We bounce each other. I mean, we maybe a little bit of that. We bounce stuff off each other.
Keep that to yourself. Yeah.
All the time. But this has been. Well, we instantly knew after we did the last live event that we needed to follow this up in one way or another. We actually had a couple other ideas, but then this perfectly seemed to come together with the timing of everything. And man, this is just so exciting. There's a lot of seats available. I think that should be explicitly said since our last event was much more limited based on the scope that we wanted to do.
I wanted to cut in here because that's true. Yes. That's a good point. I feel bad about the way it went down last time because we didn't really organize it well enough. Like the tickets were on sale and then like basically gone. And like people didn't have time to prepare because, like I just bought tickets to see 311 in March in Norfolk. And they announced that, the tickets are going to be available then. This is when we're coming. This is when the tickets will be on sale. And everyone kind of understands, right? Like that's just the normal way it did. And we didn't really do it that way. And so I know it created a lot of consternation with people that wanted to go and just didn't have a chance to prepare themselves for, all of the different things. So we want to ameliorate that by announcing it ahead of time. And we're sorry about that. So again, one more time, Sacred Symbols 200, ranking the 25 best PlayStation 4 games live in Richmond, Virginia at the National, Saturday, April 30th. Can't believe we're playing the National. It's so wild. Snark Tank opening now. Now,
it's
Chris,
be scary.
How are you feeling about Snark Tank opening up your podcast, opening for us, just doing a little show, a little something to prepare the crowd?
Yeah, it's fun. This is gonna be weird. Me, Derek, and Sweeney have never done anything to this capacity. I don't think Sweeney's ever even been to a meetup or like a convention. He's never been to VidCon. So this is gonna be the first time that we are going to be doing anything even slightly like this, and it's super excited. Everybody's pumped about it. We'll see what we can do with the live format to have a little bit more fun than we normally could. I think it'll be a good time.
Me too. I'm excited about it. So thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of All Things Last Stand. Our Patreon's doing better than ever. Traffic is higher than ever. I think the energy is really high because I feel like, candidly, I think we're doing something totally different than a lot of other people are doing. And we are so glad that is resonating with so many of you. So come join us live in Richmond, Virginia, the beautiful city of Richmond, Virginia. Now, I apologize. Yes, it is the Confederate capital. Maybe Kotaku will write a story about that saying
Bring it.
Sacred Symbols does its first live event in ex-Confederate capital city. And it'll become like one of the top searches for my name on Google. But come enjoy the city. Richmond is an awesome city. Really beautiful, small to mid-size, which is really nice. Awesome hotels, awesome restaurants, great scenery, lots of history. Like I was saying, oh my God, the Revolutionary War and Civil War history around here is dope. So make a total date of it if you can, come for the weekend and hang out. So really excited about that. Stoked to see you guys out there. Come join us. Okay, let's move on. It's time to begin our show with some things that we need to discuss. And I wanted to start with this nice letter from Sid Smith to reinforce the positivity in our audience about taking care of yourself. He says, "Greetings and salutations, brethren of the sacred symbols. I just wanted to give you fine folk a massive thank you. For the past year, I've suffered from severe depression. I had a great deal of trouble finding joy in anything, video games included. The three of you were my direct link to my passion for gaming in those trying times, and I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for your wit, chemistry, and great knowledge of the gaming industry. Thank you. Cheers to many more episodes of you beautiful bastards from the cold peaks of the Canadian Rockies." Thank you, Sid. We get a lot of private letters like this as well. For some reason, I think people feel comfortable talking about this. Make sure to take care of yourselves out there. Body, mind, and spirit. However you would like to do that. I mean, that's totally up to you. But everyone has trials and tribulations. So that this show can contribute positively is really awesome to hear. And by the way, speaking of depression, it might shock you to believe that I am clinically depressed. Can you believe that? So
should we laugh at that?
I'm laughing. It's too late.
Chris is laughing. We used to go to the same psychiatrist in Santa Monica. Like he's escaping.
That's true. Oh my God.
Right. Jacob Marcus Downing wrote in and said, "Hey, cock and called Dorcher. Sorry to break it to you boys, but the Lego Uncharted rumor you guys discussed in the previous episode was a hoax. To TLDR for you, someone took the opportunity during a recent flood of real Lego leaks to experiment with spreading a fake one. Not to bust your balls, but I believe this debunking had actually happened before you recorded said episode. So I saw this after the fact. For people that are getting caught up, there was this leak from, the Lego world, as it were. I don't know anything about Legos. That there was an Uncharted set coming. And it ended up being just by happenstance this kind of intentional plant by this website. I guess it's called Jay's Brick Blog, which is apparently a blog about Lego bricks, it says. And apparently it's a very well-respected thing. And the entire thing was, he says, in part, quote, "I've always had a fascination with Lego leaks and the entire cottage industry that revolves around the sourcing and sharing of upcoming unconfirmed Lego sets and themes." And so he tried to do one himself to see how it tracked. And that happened to be the Uncharted 4 one. Now, I totally love that. I think that's awesome. Kind of sucks for us because we're not in that space. So we're just trying to relay word. It's a little disingenuous to do that, although I like the idea. And I've thought about doing that in my own time as well, just because it's fun to track bullshit. But I wanted to say that was fake. But, we're outsiders looking in. So it's obviously going to get past the goalie with us.
Yeah.
So you know what, Jay's Brick Blog? I'm not even going to say, because last time I said a bad word on this show early on, we got demonetized.
I think we could just leave it with a stand down.
Stand down.
Yeah, stand down.
Please. Well, anyway, thank you for that. That is an important correction. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I did see that was fake and then forgot to put it in the document, and then it was in the write-in. So always thank you for writing in on Patreon, Jacob. You son of a gun. Ryan McQueenie wrote in. This has nothing to do with games, but we must bring it up because it's very interesting. He says, "Hi, boys. Not related to gaming, but I wanted to get your opinion on China changing the ending to the classic film Fight Club. Spoiler. Now, Fight Club came out 23 years ago. So you had a chance now. The ending of Fight Club shows Ed Norton's character killing his alter ego, Tyler Durden, and observing the explosions and chaos that unfolds from Project Mayhem. In this new Chinese edit, the shot cuts off right before the explosions and cues to a black screen stating, quote, through the clue provided by Tyler, the police rapidly figured out the whole plan and arrested all criminals, successfully preventing the bomb from exploding. After the trial, Tyler was sent to a lunatic asylum receiving psychological treatment. He was discharged from the hospital in 2012, end quote. I found this absurd and spitting in the face of both the author, Chuck Palahniuk. How do you say that? Palahniuk? I never actually have heard it said. Palahniuk? And director David Fincher. Was curious what you guys thought of this and what it means for your future and creative expression throughout mediums controlled by larger heads. Thanks, you guys are great. Dude, I wanted to bring this up because, first of all, it's interesting and it has a lot to do with entertainment and what we talk about on the show. But
Right.
so many people DM'd about this. I don't know if you saw that, Dustin, because I know you keep track of the inbox. We get DMs, a bunch of DMs every day, but a ton of people wanted to make sure we saw this. This is nuts. And the exact reason why we try to bring up all the screwed up things that are happening in and related to China and Saudi Arabia and other places that have their hands in gaming. I was going to talk about it further, but I deleted it from the document. But, the esports league, like the big esports framework, was purchased by the Saudi royal family last week. And the Saudi royal family are not good people. Sorry. So this Chinese thing about like there could be no successful terrorism even in fiction is so dystopian. I've been hearing word that there's a movie in China. This is a big smash hit about an invasion of the United States that's successful or something like that. Like they fight us in a war and they win. And I really want to see it. It's funny that when it goes against, I guess, any of their closely held beliefs or order, politics, government, it's edited out. And this is why we bring these things up. It is a wild example right in your face of what it means to do business in China. Chris, did you see this? And what do you think? It's so funny, too, because we just did Fight Club on Knockback not too long ago. So.
Yeah, I haven't seen Fight Club or anything, but I assume this is probably...
Wait, you've never seen Fight Club?
No, I know what happens. Like, I've known what happens the whole time. Like, it was spoiled for me so long ago that I was like, oh, well.
That's interesting.
The whole point of Fight Club is that twist, kind of. So, like, I just thought, do I really need to see this?
Well... Fair enough. And I guess it wouldn't really mean very much to you. Fair enough. It's I think higher in my mind because again, I just watched it a couple months ago.
Right. Well, Dustin, it is a pretty insane instance of just a complete reworking of the intention of a work of fiction. It is unpleasant.
It's ridiculous because obviously, I don't know. Dustin, what do you think?
I feel like the main thing that really frustrates me about this is that I would assume that this was a decision made on the studio level in order to allow this release to happen. And it just sucks because we would want these big studios to protect the creative intent of the director, the writer, whatever. And this is why, I don't want to connect everything to consolidation, but this is why we don't trust big companies because it's all down to the almighty dollar, whether it's at your expense or the creative expense often. Look at like Disney and the shit they pulled with Force Awakens, did they completely remove Finn from the Chinese version of the poster? They minimized him.
Yeah. There was there are posters of him removed and I think also diminished in size, not quite as prominent.
There's a pretty prominent theory, although there's not that I've seen. There's some evidence that you could assess this through, but there's a lot of speculation that Finn was originally supposed to be the main character until it got, until they realized how important it would be for China to accept
That's interesting.
the new trilogy. Which makes perfect sense if you watch that first movie.
Definitely.
Movie opens up with him, it makes perfect sense that would be the trajectory. But
that's interesting.
it's a problem, man. Disney is so big and occasionally you'll get really cool things. You'll get something like the Avengers, but then occasionally you'll get a complete mess like the Star Wars sequel trilogy. It's either the best of the best or the worst of the worst. There's no in between.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. People my point is just watch out. These giant companies don't have necessarily good intent all the time. And this is a perfect example. I would love to see what David Fincher and our boy Chuck, whatever his last name is, the author, no disrespect, I just don't know how to say it either.
I've never heard anyone say it. I've heard it. I've read it many times.
Palanwick?
Palanwick, yeah, something like that.
I would love to know what they think, just because this, I can guess what they would think, but it just sucks. Yeah, it sucks. There's no way around it.
Yeah, I guess maybe I would have heard Dagan say it. Dagan is always good with those names. I will say that there was that PC game that was in the news late last year. I think it's German it's a World War III game and they label China as West Taiwan on their map. And I think where the Uyghurs are is called Uyghur. instead of like Xinjiang or whatever, Xinjiang or whatever. I'm not going to try to pronounce Chinese words, Mandarin or Cantonese, even though I don't know the difference. So I am going to start baking stuff into our games too. Not the next one coming up because it won't make any sense, as you're going to see, but in future games, I'm definitely baking in things that will make the game unsellable in China. And I'll put them in the trophies. I'll do whatever it takes. No edits.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. And yeah, it is very disturbing. And by the way, Chris, you're right, because first of all, I like episode 7 a lot. I think it's a good movie, very safe movie, but a very good movie. And I think Finn is a really great character. A turncoat stormtrooper is such an exciting idea.
Yeah.
And Rey sucks. Rey's a horrible Mary Sue type. Is that what they call the character? She's beating the shit out of everyone. She knows how to use a lightsaber immediately. It's like, this sucks.
Yeah. Well, it's also just a complete retread. It's the same shit. Like the promise of a turncoat stormtrooper is so much more interesting and it had so much more promise. It really is a shame.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's see here. All right, time to get into the various news items at hand before we get into what we're playing and then the deeper news. So a few days ago from when we're recording this, people that were on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, particularly at night, I think it was, I don't know, a Monday or a Tuesday, started noticing that trophies were going wild on the console. And a lot of people started writing about it. I noticed it because I was playing too, and I actually got screenshots of it. So it definitely happened. Like it happened for a very brief time, but a lot of people just missed it completely. And what ended up happening, and I've never seen this since 2008, since trophies were introduced, is that the lists on PS5 would show your PS5 trophies, but everything else would be broken, showing 0% and a broken image icon. And it would be the interesting thing about it were they are all labeled PS3, no matter what they were. So some of them were broken were PS4, some of them broken were Vita, some of them broken were PS3. No PS5 trophies were broken. So what's obvious, well, I should back up and say the other thing that's important to note is that the PS5 trophies are running on a different system, basically. Trophies are much more flexible now. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, about the Uncharted Legacy Collection, because a lot of people are upset about what's going on with the trophies in that. And so the trophy system works differently a little bit now. You can pile more trophies in. Remember, we talked recently about that train sim game that literally had to tell its audience it cannot put any more trophies into the game. Like it's not possible for it to do. So it seems likely, in my opinion, and in the opinion of some people, that Sony was fucking around with something quietly behind the scenes. Now, the speculation is that it has something to do with Spartacus. We don't really know. But I wanted to acknowledge that. And Aaron Omar wrote in and said, "Greetings, CDC. Earlier this week, I experienced a strange trophy glitch that caused most of my thumbnails and trophies to disappear. The affected lists, as he said, were also tagged as PS3 games. This occurred for less than an hour, with the only evidence being screenshots and the threads on PSN profiles. We know that Sony is messing around on the back end, but could this be a sign that backwards compatible titles will indeed have trophy support? Maybe it's wishful thinking on my end, but something special may be brewing for us trophy hunters. Stay safe and stay well, fellas." Yeah, my answer to this, Aaron, is I think it has something to do. Like, there would be no reason for that to have happened unless they were just migrating everything. I don't know, but they wouldn't typically announce stuff like that, and they wouldn't do it on a weeknight. So yeah, I wanted to acknowledge that happened. I thought it was very interesting and very weird. I'm sure you guys don't care, but I know some audience members do. So wanted to share that. But Oakley Waldron wrote into us. He says, "Hey guys, there's something really, really strange about the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection trophy list. It essentially combines the Uncharted 4 and the Lost Legacy trophy list minus four's multiplayer trophies, but makes the Lost Legacy's trophies a DLC list. However, the Lost Legacy trophies are all required in order to achieve the platinum. This is the first time an add-on or DLC list has been mandatory in order to achieve the platinum. Keep up the amazing work, guys." This is weird. Now, again, I'm going to get into the mechanics of this. I know the guys are going to blaze over for a couple minutes as I explain this, but people are really upset about this. When I first saw this, I actually thought it was cool. I was like, oh, they're making the trophy harder, the platinum harder to get. But basically, DLC lists only are required to get a platinum trophy if it's typically like a Game of the Year edition or something, and they're all baked in or redone so that they share one list. Some games do this, but many games don't. Even Game of the Year editions will often come with DLC lists that are separate. So it's clear that somewhere along the way, they were able to make these trophies work differently than usual. And it's created what is essentially a trophy list that, and I'm trying to find the exact list. Yeah, here it is. 4 golds, 20 silvers, and 76 bronzes to get the platinum. That is the most required to ever get a platinum. That's 2,000. That's the equivalent on the back end of 2,400 points. Typically, you have between, and I know this because I've made the trophy lists, it's something like between 1,200 and 1,400 points you have to spend however you want. And those divide between bronze, silver, and gold. So they've added on this stuff, and it's really annoying people. Like if you go on PSN profiles, there's like people just raging about this happening. But I actually think it's kind of cool. The only problem is that it flies in the face of this real looseness they have with the trophy system, where they don't seem to give a shit about trophies, but then they're treating this with a lot of care. So it's contradictory, and I wanted to acknowledge that as well. So I know some people are upset about that. We'll play it by ear. Game's coming, or the game will be out by the time people hear this, I guess, finally, on PS5. I made the error last week of saying they were coming to PC as well. PlayStation app has finally, quietly been updated to allow uploaded screenshots and videos to go directly to the app. So if you've been looking forward to that, you can now do that. Capcom doing very well. Small news item, 5 years in a row of record profits, according to Video Games Chronicle. Resident Evil Village is at 5.7 million units. So good news for them. Xbox, continued explosive growth. Xbox Series X and S estimated at about 12 million units. Hardware revenue is up 63.3% year over year. Chris, what do you think? 12 million Xbox Series X and S sold. Different consoles. Yeah. We don't have the split between them. I don't quite think this is the same as PS4 and PS4 Pro, in my opinion. I know some people disagree. I just don't think they're quite similar to each other. But anyway, go ahead.
The S and X thing is kind of weird because they are comparable and they're closer to each other than I think previous alternate SKUs would be. But they're also, I saw this weird video. I think it was Digital Foundry, although I'm not exactly sure, where they showed that an Xbox One X with a solid state hard drive attached to it actually performs a little better than the S, which is like interesting. So it's like that hardware disparity is like really interesting. But I will say 12 million is more than I had anticipated. I feel like the last time I checked, which wasn't long ago, pretty recently, it was like, I think estimated at around 8 or 9. So that the fact that it's in the teens now, it's pretty wild. I mean, and up 20, what is it, 63%?
Yeah, 63% gaming revenue up for Xbox. So they're doing great.
That's pretty crazy.
I know everyone's tired of hearing about Xbox on this show, so we won't get more into it than we really have to at this point. We'll talk a little bit in the news about them, but want to acknowledge very staunch competition coming from that sector. Very, very lucrative company, Microsoft.
This episode of Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Cometeer. Cometeer is the first coffee you melt to make. It's delicious quality coffee that's ready in seconds. Cometeer's freshly brewed coffee arrives flash frozen inside the world's first 100% curbside recyclable capsule. It's super simple to melt your way hot or iced coffees, lattes, and so much more. No machines or expensive equipment needed. It's simply incredible, fuss-free, mess-free coffee. As listeners of the show know, I am obsessed with coffee, and what Cometeer is doing is really interesting. Cometeer's brewing process captures over 2,000 flavor compounds that exist in a single coffee bean. Cometeer offers a wide variety of light, medium, and dark roast single origin and blended coffee roasts from the best specialty roasters. The coffee is immediately flash frozen at minus 321 degrees Fahrenheit inside a recyclable capsule to lock in freshness and flavor. Cometeer has discovered the best way to brew, preserve, and deliver delicious coffee to your home. All you got to do is add water to enjoy it, hot or cold. With Cometeer, you can have a high-quality, balanced cup of coffee in the time it takes to boil water or fill a glass with ice, all for a fraction of the price of cafe coffee. I try to have coffee with every episode of a show that I record. It's just such a nice way to ease in and relax into the conversation. And it may be no surprise to a lot of the listeners out there, I can be a bit of a coffee snob. I enjoy all the fancy buzzwords around coffee. Single origin, pour over, espresso. But what's so exciting to me about Cometeer is that it completely lowers the barrier to entry into fantastic coffee. You don't need a gooseneck kettle or a fancy grinder or pour over setup. All you need is either hot water or ice, and you're good to go, and you're drinking awesome coffee. And trust me, some of the roasters that they offer are really legit. Cometeer brings you the best coffee on the planet. It's incredible, but don't just take my word for it. Experience it for yourself and try the coffee you melt to make, brewed exclusively in partnership with award-winning roasters. And we've got a special deal for you. Save $20 off your first order when you sign up at cometeer.com/sacred. That's COMETEER.com/sacred. And we thank Cometeer for sponsoring the podcast.
Dustin, I wanted to throw this one over to you. I actually put in our Discord chat yesterday the final, I guess it's really the demo trailer for the upcoming game Monark. And Monark is a new game from a new studio, a Japanese role-playing game that is staffed by ex-Atlas employees that specifically worked on Shin Megami Tensei. And I'm wondering what you think of this game, because I love the way you describe it. I'll let you describe it the way you've been describing this game. But what I was shocked about, especially having now been 70-something hours in the Persona 4, is this game is a blatant ripoff of Persona in every way, but I don't really mind it because I'm kind of into it. It actually reminds me a little bit of like Trails of Cold Steel meets Persona, because it takes place within an academy, it seems like, which is a little bit more Danganronpa, a little bit more Trails of Cold Steel, where that's like the setting, as opposed to Persona 4, for instance, where the school is like one setting, but it's really happening elsewhere. So what do you think about this upcoming game Monark? It comes out February 22nd on PS4 and PS5. I'm definitely going to play it. It looks awesome.
This is one that I've seen here and there. We talked about it before, as you mentioned on the show. And yeah, I when we were talking about it, I said it was Aldi Persona, but then I remembered that I love Aldi. So I right. said, no, it's the Great Value, which is the Walmart brand Persona, which, to be fair, looking at this game, like I'm looking at the trailer right now, it looks of quality. I've seen some Japanese games that are, shit out, that just don't look good at all. This is not in that category, but you are correct in that the school setting, and there was something else too, whether about like a shadow world or something like that.
Yeah, the shadow world, there are egos instead of personas.
Yeah.
They use like even down to the, and this is one of the things I hate about Persona, is just all the made up language stuff with like magic and attack names and shit. Like I hate that. And they have like a similar thing you can see when they're going through the menus in this game. So it's a lot. It seems to be, they're like a shadow has engulfed, and I'm like, so it's like the fog in Persona, right?
Right.
It takes place in an academy. There's even a mascot. You see him for a little while. There's even like a Teddy like apparition thing, like character, so anyway.
Well, I will say the biggest difference looking at this trailer is that it looks to be a tactical RPG, because it shows an overhead view. So I'm thinking that means you move your characters around during battle, and that's probably the biggest difference from a Persona, where Persona is just more of a traditional turn-based. So the demo, though, I feel like I gotta check that out for sure.
Yeah, I'm just gonna play it. I'm not even gonna bother. Similar to Scarlet Nexus, I'm in. I'm gonna play it sight unseen, because I just think it's cool to see a level, maybe double A level role playing games, more A level, I think, coming out of Japan. That's not like an Atelier game. Not that there's anything wrong with those necessarily, but I'm sick of Hyperdimension, Atelier, all this stuff. And then at the top level, you have Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, and Tales. We have to wait for those games. So I want to support the NIS, Axis, Xseed type games to make sure that even without Vita, Monarch would have been perfect for Vita. So, all right, wanted to acknowledge that. Guys, I'm curious what you think of this. There are rumors abound that Destruction AllStars may be going free to play. I'm curious what you think of this. They have basically challenges named, and the names indicate _F2P within the name of them. So people are indicating that this once $70 game that was then released on PlayStation Plus, that was then sold for $20, is now actually going to go free to play. And apparently some people, I think Push Square and others, were reporting that the game has been updated and is pretty good now. But I think it's too little too late. Chris, do you have any interest in getting into the vehicular combat of Destruction AllStars if it goes free to play?
I do have a a morbid curiosity about it, just because this is a game that's been around for a while now, and it only ever comes up when we're talking about it in the news, typically in a negative light, or like,
Yeah,
or not
true.
the most positive light at the very least. So I don't know. Probably not, just because honestly, I thought this was free to play, not because I knew that information, but because you look at it and your eyes translate the image into, yeah, that's a free to play game. What do you mean? You know, it just feels that way when you look at it. So I can't see myself downloading this, even for what is it like 8 gigs, probably not even that big. I can't.
I'm looking at just player count on PSN profiles. You have to kind of glean from it. It's not really fair, apples to apples, but it only has 43,400 registered players, which is not a lot for a game that was released to PlayStation Plus. For instance, Returnal has 36,000. Days Gone has 298,000. Grand Theft Auto 5 has 1.3 million. So that's kind of the stretch you're looking at. I think our games have like several thousand. So it's not a holistic view of how games are selling, but I just don't know that there's any reason to hold on to this game. And we're going to talk about Twisted Metal later on in the show, but Dustin, I'm just curious, didn't they just miss an opportunity here to do Twist? I don't know why they felt like they needed to make Destruction AllStars an IP. It's just so generic and boring looking. I'm sorry. It just looks like Fortnite. All these games blur together, like that Rumbleverse game we're going to talk about in a little while. And
oh my God,
all this shit coming out of EA and all, it's like, it all looks the same. It all looks the same. And I think that's really what hurt Destruction AllStars, because people love vehicular combat.
Right. I don't know. This game feels like it should have been free to play at launch in a way, and I don't know if that has to do with the art style lending to thinking about it like a Fortnite game. You'd imagine the customizable cars, the customizable characters, or whatever. And Colin, I think you're right that this is just too little, too late. At this point, it feels like I'm assuming that there's a very, very small community out there for this game, and it's probably dropping daily. And so I guess the best possible outcome for this game is that when it does go free to play, that if, like you said, there's been some decent improvements to make the game much more worthwhile, that something blossoms out of whatever remains in the wreckage, no pun intended, of this title. But we'll see. I just don't know what they were thinking with this game overall.
Yeah,
it's just, I don't know. The question is, would the Twisted Metal IP would have saved this title? I don't know, because I know this game has had its fans throughout its run so far, but I don't know.
I personally think it would have. I mean, yeah. It's not to say that there's 2012's Twisted Metal on PS3, which was the last Twisted Metal game, didn't do very well. It sold over 1 million copies, I think, but it didn't. That's not great, and it needs more than that. Especially that game, which was totally structured around PSN. It didn't have really any single player functionality, so there was no campaign or anything like that. Not that people would want to play it for that reason, but I think that Destruction AllStars was like the bare minimum of what would be attractive in that genre to people. I think Twisted Metal holds just more weight. And I agree with you. I remember saying at the time when they announced the prices of the games, I'm like, no one's going to pay $70 for this. And they ended up delaying it. And then I think that allowed them to get out of pricing it that way, so they didn't look stupid, because they still kept a lot of other games like Demon's Souls at that price. And then they released it to PlayStation Plus. So it's not been a good trajectory. I don't think Lucid is particularly up to the task. They don't feel like we've been talking a lot lately about organic workings and how you get studios involved with you. Lucid doesn't really seem to be up to the task, in my opinion. And we'll talk more about that later. I don't know if that's fair or not, but when you look at all of the first and second party games that have come out in recent years, that's a notable dud, in my opinion. And so I don't know why they would continue to be even interested in it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I wanted to ask this question. I don't even really know what the answer is going to be from you guys, because obviously we're all into different things, but I was curious about this. Attila Farsang wrote in and said, "Hello, shit stabbers. I have a question on collecting. Other than video games, what are your hobbies or any collecting you do? I, for one, love hockey card collecting as well as Warhammer and comics. I know Colin collects G.I. Joes. Is there anything else you have time for? So first of all, I used to collect hockey cards when I was a kid, Attila. I have thousands of them. You should message me. I'm looking to just get rid of them or offload them. I don't know if they're worth anything, but they're just sitting around and I don't really want them anymore. Probably from the 1987 to 88 season through 1995, 96, something like that. Anyway, so reach out, DM me if you'd like. But yeah, G.I. Joe's a huge passion of mine. You can't really see them in the background, but I got these custom made lit glass shelves that I'm going to start putting my G.I. Joes in. I actually just ordered a custom, I contracted another custom shelf for back here. That's going to be here as well. So I like collecting certain things. Otherwise, I'm a minimalist. I like throwing things away. I don't like having things, but G.I. Joe, yeah, I love G.I. Joe. And that's basically it as far as collectible hobbies are concerned. And I don't really even have time for that. Chris, what would you consider your hobbies? Do you have time for anything, especially collecting? Do you collect anything? I actually don't know the answer to this. I don't think.
I don't. I never had like an itch to collect anything really. Like I had friends who collected comics. I had like friends in like middle school or like probably earlier than that who collected like bottle caps or like things like that. And I don't know if I don't like clutter is the thing. So I think I'm kind of like you, where even when I move, typically, if I'm moving somewhere and it's far away, typically what I do is I either throw a bunch of shit away or sell a bunch of stuff or just give stuff that I don't feel like taking just to friends who might find use for it, because I only need what I absolutely need, which is like my computer, my clothes, and that's it. And even my clothes, I guess, like sometimes I'll be like, oh, why do I have this fucking shirt from 15 years ago? I'm donating to Goodwill or whatever. So I'm not a collector, really. I think the closest thing that you could say that I collect, I guess, is guitars. But that's really only because I like guitars. I have 8 or 9 guitars right now. And that's over the course of, 21 years of actively wanting guitars. So it's not like I buy a new guitar every 10 days like a psycho. But that's probably the closest thing. And a bunch of Halo memorabilia, just because people always, oh, you're the Halo guy, I know what gift to give you. And then I just wind up with all this. I have like 3 Master Chief helmets and I'm like, I don't need this really, but I'll accept it. Never really been one to hoard. I like playing music as a hobby and stuff like that. I used to draw a lot too, but I put that down a while ago. I want to get back into doing that, but just don't have the time to get good at that shit.
Yeah, it's good to have an analog hobby, I think, or try to have analog hobbies. Like I was a prodigious reader of books. I got custom shelves made in the loft and finally have like my library up there. And I was looking at it, I was like, damn, man, I wish I had time to do more things, but I just don't have any time. So, Dustin, hobbies for you. What do you have anything here to this question about collecting or things that you do on the side, outside?
Yeah. As far as collecting, I think the primary ones are I've gathered a pretty extensive vinyl collection that I'm pretty happy with, of both new and old. I have a pretty nice collection of not necessarily first print or anything, but vintage like Beatles records, which are pretty cool to have. I have a small enamel pin collection, but I'm not going crazy. Those are just, if I see something I like, I'll buy it. I'm not trying to have like an entire wall of enamel pins. And then my prized collection is my Amiibo collection, of course. That's semi gaming, but it is proudly displayed.
It's not semi gaming, it is gaming. Yeah. But yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. Colin, I remember the Sunday after the event, we were hanging out at my house. There was we had a fire outside, many beers, maybe other smoking related substances, whatever, all kinds of fun times were had.
Libations.
Holly told me later, because I think I was hanging out in the kitchen with Jimmy and Ben and stuff like that, but you were kind of floating around, and she told me that you were one by one just taking Amiibo off the shelf and then just stopping, pausing, looking around, carefully placing it back, and then just finding the next one that suited your interests. And she said that went on for a decent amount of time.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Yeah, because there's seeing that shelf really reminded me of I don't have all of the ones that I want.
Mm.
Because I wasn't into buying all of them. Like I said many times, and there's some back there. I have Mega Man and Mario and Toad, like ones that I really wanted. And I put the D is my fighter in Smash, so I have him. I love that character. I love that fucking crazy ass face of his. And I have the Shovel Knight ones and all of that, but I stopped buying them and really just wanted them more because they're such cool toys. I've said before, if they made the Mega Man Robot Masters like this, I would buy all of them, all 100 of them or whatever. But they don't make anything like that. So I wanted to support this like really nice, high quality toy. But then I see stuff like, what was it, like Richter and or Simon Belmont or one of them. And there's a few others where I'm like, shit, Cloud, I think was one.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few where I was looking, even Little Mac, which is not old or not new rather. And a few others. I was like, yeah, I got to pick up a few of these. And so I was kind of examining the ones that I would want to get. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what it was. And I don't know the exact totality of which ones I want. I like definitely Little Mac, definitely the Castlevania stuff, and a few others. So yeah, that did happen.
But yeah, as far as analog or just other hobbies, I mentioned doing some model kits a few weeks ago, but that's kind of on and off. I don't know. I like to go to concerts and I don't know, Holly and I like to go out and eat at nice restaurants, whatever. I don't know. Watch anime. I don't feel like it's weird now that I feel like I used to have a million hobbies when I was younger, and I've kind of just settled into the few that I really, really like. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing to go where your mind takes you.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to mix it up when you can, in my opinion. All right. Let's get into what we're playing. It's time. Dustin, we'll start with you, and then we'll move to Chris, and then we'll move to me. Talk to me.
So I mentioned you guys last week that I feel a little bit in a gaming slump right now where I'm just so excited about some key releases that when I have some free time, I'll sit down and think, okay, what are the options to do? I can play a game, I could watch a show, whatever. And right now I'm not feeling super pulled towards gaming because I just know that there's some amazing stuff on the horizon. But I am playing Death Stranding again because, as you may remember, late last year, I was really going into the director's cut. And I was lightly thinking about calling Platinum. Maybe I was thinking about it, but I didn't want to look at the trophy. I just wanted to play and try and be extensive with deliveries and stuff like that. Well, I broke that and I looked at what is required of the Platinum in that game. And I lost that desire very quickly. So I've decided that I don't want to leave it unfinished. So I'm going and I'm just going to finish the game at this point. I think I just have probably less than 8 hours, I would think. I'm getting close to the end. I'm in the snowy mountains up top, and I'm about to go to the final portion of the game. And it's just really... It's just such a stunning game. And it got me excited thinking about Hideo Kojima's posting on Twitter about lightly talking about like teasing new projects, not really, but just showing that he's working on stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's going to be Kojima season pretty soon of some kind. I feel like surely we're going to find about at least one of his projects, assuming he has multiple in the works right now this year. And that's just exciting because he has proven with Death Stranding that he is not just a one-trick pony with Metal Gear Solid, and that he can take shit that would never make sense on paper and make something really incredible and compelling. So
yeah, that still doesn't make sense when you play it.
Yeah, but it's all, you love it at the same time. It's like,
no, totally. Like I know what you mean. I love that snowy section of that game too. Like that's probably like the most. I know this is like a really overused term, but I feel like that is the most immersive part of the game as far as like climbing goes, because you really feel that. You really feel like the weight and the just the low visibility and just it's so good.
Yeah, it's just a shockingly fantastic game, I think. And looking back on it, man, if you guys seriously, if you haven't played this game, play it. And if you are curious about the PS5 version, it's very, very good. Playing at 60 FPS, the DualSense, it's a really, really nice package. Check it out.
Cool, man. Yeah, Death Stranding is wonderful. Right on. Chris, talk to me about what you're playing.
Yeah, so I jumped back into Destiny 2 recently with my Snark Tank co-host Sween, because the Witch Queen is approaching, the new expansion, and I'm looking forward to it. Bungie has been very, very unusually tight-lipped about it, which is kind of exciting. It means I just feel like there's a lot more new stuff to look forward to. There's a lot of stuff to be surprised by. And I also just think this is just like the coolest looking expansion that I've seen out of them. Just the idea of, enemies that can resurrect in the same way that you can is like super, super exciting. And it just looks like a lot of fun. So I'm jumping into that and sort of finishing some of the checklist stuff that I haven't finished. Man, Destiny 2 is so weird because it is genuinely one of the best designed FPSs that I think I have ever played, but I can't recommend it to anybody because it's so, you need to do so much homework, and it really is a game for fans of it. It's so hard to convince a new person to jump into this, and it's such a shame because it's so good and so well designed and so beautiful in certain areas, and just a fun time. But I'm just getting some of the stuff out of the way before the expansion drops, so I'm not completely in the dark. And I jumped back into Pray for the Gods for a little bit. This is that Shadow of the Colossus spiritual successor made by a team of, I think, I feel pretty confident in saying less than like 7 or 8 people, but I could be wrong on that. So close, man. It's so, like, the atmosphere is there, like the feeling is there, but just moving around just feels so budget, and it feels more PlayStation 2 than Shadow of the Colossus felt. Just crazy. It's just such a shame because it's when you see what something could be, and you're just like, man, like this was you were so close. you could have just spent a little bit more time on this and ironed out the small kinks, and you probably would have been there. But it's got the biggest problem that I have is just it just feels so unpleasant to move around, which is like what you're going to be doing for the majority of any time playing a game is controlling the character and moving around. So if that feels janky, then the game by extension as a whole just feels kind of out of sorts. And they use the worst possible type of grappling hook ever, which is like that you point somewhere and then you go to that thing directly. It's like a zip line, like the least satisfying. Dude, if you had pitched me Shadow of the Colossus with a grappling hook, oh my God. Would have been that's Attack on Titan, basically. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But it's just, I don't know, it falls short. Like I'll give it some time. Maybe they'll work on it some more, iron that stuff out. But as of right now, I'm just not feeling it, and I'm kind of bummed about that because it's been in the works for so long, and it's such a good premise and so close to being what it should be. But I don't know. I'm probably not going to touch it again for a very, very, very long time unless there's some major news about it being a little bit reworked.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know people were excited about that game, but I'm sure it has its fans out there. Sorry you didn't like it very much.
Yeah.
For me, still playing Persona 4 Golden, have gotten to what I would consider to be the big twist. I'm in December 2011 in the game, so getting close to the end, I think. Still chipping away 30 minutes to an hour a day. We'll see how that goes. And then the game that I wanted to really talk about here is a game I just stumbled upon. Every once in a while, I go on PlayStation Store, go to the PS4, the PS5 games, order them by release date, and then just see what's come out and just watch trailers and look at screenshots. And once in a while, I find things this way. This is how I found Ender Lilies, I think, which was awesome, and a few other games. The Deedlit Wonder Labyrinth game, I found the same way. That game was awesome. And so I found a game called Mercenaries Rebirth when I was searching this way. And it's from a Japanese studio called Ride On. I didn't know much about this series at all, but in reading about it, it's apparently maybe 6, 7, 8 years old now, this series. And these are they're turn-based tactical role-playing games in the vein of Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics, whatever. But they're not super high budget. They're $20 games. And they've released apparently a series of them. Now, I think that they've released 3 of them over time on PS4, but their native home is actually Switch. And so I think these ports are happening over time. And so I just watched the trailer for this game and I was like, wow, this looks awesome. And the best way that I could describe it to people is, everyone knows how I love Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics has complementary games on Game Boy Advance called Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. There's two of them, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, and then there's one on DS A2. Those games are kind of like budget, smaller versions of Final Fantasy Tactics, and this game feels like in that vein to me. So it's not as good as Fell Seal, which I think is one of the very best tactical role-playing games that has ever been released. That's from 2019 or 2018. And then there's Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre and a few others. I know people really love Fire Emblem. I personally don't. This game is like a rung below that, but I'm having a great time with it. Just pop on a podcast, very rudimentary story, class-based. But what's cool about it, what I like about it is that some of these games get carried away with classes and all of the customization. It gets quite daunting to know what you're even supposed to do and if you're playing it quite correctly or whatever. What I like about this is that the game gives you just a limited amount of characters. So it's like a party. So in most tactical RPGs, you have like some party members and then you like recruit characters and all this shit. So none of that's in there, which I like. And then each character has their own set of like skill trees that they learn, their own classes. So you're not saying like, should I make this guy into a white mage now? Or should I what should I do with this guy? It kind of brings you along. And you spend skill points to unlock their different skill trees, and there's equipment and stuff. And the other thing I really like, and I've been talking about this with Persona 4 Gold and how much I love the menus and using the menus to pop around the game, is this game is all menu based. You're literally either on the grid or you're in the menus, and there's just one menu, and it just says like shop, party, all this stuff, and you just go in, and it's so fluid. I really got to highly recommend this game. The full title, I want to make sure. Do I have it? Yeah. Mercenaries Rebirth, Call of the Wild Links. And it's from the Mercenaries Saga Chronicles, I guess. Or there's like the Switch RPG site says a compilation of the first 3 tactical RPGs. They call them budget-friendly experiences. So highly recommended. This game is really cool. Mercenaries Rebirth, Call of the Wild Links. I'm going to probably go back and play some of the other ones too. I will never get tired of these kinds of games. They're like Castlevania, Metroidvania 2D games. I just will never, ever, ever get tired of them. And as long as there are not many of them and they're difficult to make. And that's why there's not many of them out there. It's difficult to get the balance right and the gameplay right and all of that. It's just very difficult to make them compelling. And I think that they've done a nice job here, and they've done it not in a 50 or 60 or 70 hour way, I don't think, but more in like a 20 or 30 hour way, which just feels much less daunting to me. Although there are 2 trophies to beat it on hard and then impossible difficulty. So presumably you'd have to beat it 3 times if you wanted to do that. I'm not going to do that. So that's it. I wanted to give a shout out to Mercenaries Rebirth, Call of the Wild Links. I know Chris wouldn't be interested in this, but Dustin, do you like tactical RPGs?
I don't know, honestly. I feel like they're so hit and miss for me that sometimes I really like them and other times I can't really get into them at all. I shouldn't say I love Fire Emblem. I love the most recent Fire Emblem, despite some of the problems it has. And so, I mean, I may be intrigued to at least check this out. I think the next game like that I will definitely check out is Triangle Strategy.
Yeah,
that looks really fantastic as well. But
it does.
Yeah, it all depends. I think so. Do you consider a game like XCOM in this category as well, or is that different? Because I know that they're grid-based tactical.
They're They are the same game. They're different, but they're the same. It's the same idea. What I don't like about XCOM, in my experience with it, is like I like the literal grid. I don't like the idea of moving a character behind a box, like you're walking them up and you're crouching them. And so it's like, let me select all this in a menu. I feel like I'm not playing it quite right. I wanted to like XCOM so bad when it came to PS3, I think. And I was like, I can't get into this. It's the same thing with Fire Emblem. I should probably clarify for people. The problem I always had with Fire Emblem, because Fire Emblem was one of those franchises, I'm like, God damn it. Like, why don't I understand Fire Emblem? The problem is that in most Fire Emblem games I played, and apparently they don't do this anymore, but they did for a long time, people will know, is that the game was presented to you like, this is what you do, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this. Very similar to Banner Saga, where there's no way to just be like, okay, can I go fight like a random party? Can I backtrack? Can I strengthen my party and experiment? No time for that. You got to go into the next thing and the next thing. And I hated that about Fire Emblem. And apparently they stopped doing that, but the Fire Emblem games I played did do that. And I hated just interacting with that. That's not what I like about tactical role-playing games. And Banner Saga did the same thing, which is a really cool series, but it became so hard because there was no way to, I only played the first one, but there was no way to get out of the structure of the game to strengthen yourself. It was all very to the number. And that feels more like a visual novel to me almost, than a truly customizable tactical role-playing game. So I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I don't, it's been a few years now since I played the most recent Fire Emblem, but I can't tell if it's a game that you would love or hate, honestly, because it has a lot of Persona style elements with choosing what you do in certain days, which I think would drive you nuts. But at the same time, it has this like really excellent, I guess, political story that has a lot of twists and turns and stuff like that. And I mean, the gameplay in that I thought was really excellent. And I think there's ways that you can, since it's a day by day based thing, you can go out and do individual missions, or you can do training or something like that. It had a little more options, but overall you are right in that it was much more linear overall. But yeah, man, tactical games, the first XCOM I was addicted to, and then the second one just made me want to pull my hair out because they added a time limit on stuff, which was by design because it forced you to make quicker decisions. Like you couldn't sit and strategize forever, but it drove
like that's
me
what
nuts.
that's the point. Like that's what I hate when people. It's like that's what a turn-based game is. Mm-hmm. That's what turn-based means. Now there is a way to time things. Of course, I play chess, and you time chess games and all that. That is a turn-based game, but generally speaking, people like them because it's supposed to be. Let's. Like I love tactical role-playing games like Final Fantasy Tactics because I love looking at the map and just being like, if I do this, and then they do this, and then I do this, and then they do this, and I do this, and putting a time limit on that. No, I don't think so. Now, I do like how they do blend it in sometimes with turn-based games successfully. Of course, active battle system in Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6, 7 onward, where it's a little bit of both, but that's different because it's not really a tactical thing. In fact, I would argue that those games are largely button mashing games with the exception of boss fights. So while every fight you have in a game like Final Fantasy Tactics is totally meaningful, like you have to focus on that fight. You can't just get out of it by button mashing. Oh man, those games are so good. My favorite, here's a little Final Fantasy Tactics experience farming tip for everyone for a game that's 24 years old now. Just, you can one of the ways to make your character, you get job points in the game to, experiment with different characters. And you can just keep a map going with, you can like put a character to sleep, like an enemy to sleep. So there's one enemy left, or leave it at like one hit point and then just start beating the shit out of each other. And you earn experience and job points. And so there's so many funny things of like people just gathering all their characters together, and their mages are like casting spells on everyone and then healing them and then casting spells on them and then healing them and just bashing them with like weak weapons and all that kind of stuff. So there is ways to break those games, but you can play them by your own rules. It's kind of like Monopoly in that way, where putting money in the middle of Monopoly, that's a house rule. Free parking, that's a house rule. All that kind of shit. Snake eyes, that's a house rule. But that's the way a lot of people play nonetheless. Let's move on to the news, my boys. It's time. Number one, big news. Horizon Forbidden West, due out on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on February 18th, only 4 days before Game of the Year Monark, has officially gone gold, indicating that core development is done, and a 1.0 version of the final game is prepared for printing and publishing, though, as always, it'll undoubtedly be amended by pre-release patches. Along with the announcement came the release of new footage, including both PS5 and PS4 Pro native gameplay, to show players the difference between the games. But this news otherwise came with nothing else notable to say. So that's that. Horizon Forbidden West will obviously make its February 18th release date and will be Sony-owned Team Guerrilla's first release in 5 years, since they released the original Horizon Zero Dawn on PS4 in early 2017. Purchased by Sony in 2005, following the release of the original Killzone on PlayStation 2 in 2004. I want to repeat that again. Purchased by Sony in 2005, following the release of the original Killzone on PlayStation 2 in 2004. Just so we know what I've been talking about the last few weeks. Guerrilla is widely known to be working on another secretive AAA game alongside their production work on the Firesprite developed PSVR 2 game, Horizon Call of the Mountain. Okay. Chris, what's your gut check on Horizon Forbidden West? It's going to make it. I don't think anyone had any doubt about that. I've stopped watching video, but what I understand is that IGN and others have put up previews, like hands-on, written, and video previews, and apparently the game looks stunning.
Yeah.
This is not a surprise, but I don't need to see anything or know anything more than that.
Yeah, I haven't looked into any of this because I'm just it's kind of a blessing to be not so interested in something that you have to absorb every single bit of information about it, but still interested enough to want to play it when it comes out. And that's kind of where I'm at, where, you know, I'm looking forward to it and I'm going to play it day one. But I don't need to see any more of it. I'm not excited to see any more of it. I'm fine and content waiting. I did kind of see a little bit of discourse on Twitter about there was a bit of a thing. It kind of echoed the God of War boat animation where it's like,
the hook animation.
Aloy goes off the hook in the same. She declines from the hook in the same way, or repels off of ropes in the same exact way, and it's like it's fun. It looks good though. Like it looks appropriate. It doesn't look awesome. Out of place. Yeah. You know, it's not like you're watching like a. It's not like you're watching The Nanny and Fran Drescher is like squash and stretched animated like out of nowhere. It's
that was like Mr.
Sheffield.
Mr. Sheffield.
No, like it's ancient references for everybody watching this. But you know, like I just that was all I saw, and it was like a compressed Twitter video. Like it so I didn't get anything like necessarily spoiled or I didn't even really see it was a mess of pixels, but the point was the animation was the same, and I'm just like, come on, dude, like it's not a big deal. I'm looking forward to it. I don't care if they reuse an animation.
Well, I think it shows. I mean, a lot of developers have been making fun of that messaging, and same with the boat animation stuff, where it really goes. And I don't mean it to be disrespectful. It's just that it really shows how some of the most vocal people in games don't know anything about making them.
Yeah,
they don't know anything about making them, and they think that when you make a sequel to a game like Horizon, Guerrilla gathers in the Netherlands in their beautiful office there, and they go around the table and they're like, "We're going to redo every single thing for the sequel."
Yeah, they put their hard drives on little canoes and they send them off to shore, and then they do Viking funerals.
Right, exactly.
It's like, we gotta do everything all over again. Your Aloy model from the first game, it's gone. We're not even going to touch it up or anything. It's just we got to redo it entirely.
Yeah, do the whole thing again. And then when they're trying to shoot the arrows to the boats, they miss, like in that Game of Thrones scene. And then Herman Holst comes in and grabs the bow and arrow and shoots it and finally lights it on fire. So I think about some of the people, you know, just the obnoxious people in the industry that just don't know fucking shit about making video games. They just have no insight into it. And no wonder you don't want to listen to these people. It's because they're going around saying like what Guerrilla should have done is redone this really complicated animation for no reason. Or what they should have done is just not put it in the game at all because it was in the other one. It doesn't really make any sense. That inclusion of that animation, same with the boat animation, doesn't mean that a lot of other work didn't go into more unique things. It's them wisely reusing very well done work from the past.
Yeah,
I can't imagine how much work went into that hook shot animation. That's obviously an appealing and iconic shot from the original Horizon, and it's very similar to the way Drake falls off of things or others. It's just the same people that want to complain about this stuff are the same people that think that subscription models are going to give you new AAA games that are all different from each other. These things make no sense next to each other. So when you hear that kind of stuff, understand that corners aren't being cut lazy developers. Yeah, these guys are real lazy. I think you're about to see how lazy Guerrilla was when Horizon Forbidden West comes out.
It's like people, you got to work smarter, not harder necessarily. Right. You know, if you have things that work, and it's like even this is like common practice especially for like big franchises with sequels and stuff. Like typically you want to spend a lot of animation work on things that are new, not old. Like if the Halo Combat Evolved assault rifle has been in the series for 20 years, you don't need to redo that animation. You just take that animation from the old one and work on a new thing like a grapple hook that hasn't been in the series before, you know, and stuff like that. That's where all of the animation work goes. It's just so weird that people have this mentality that you need to redo perfectly good work over again. Otherwise it doesn't count. It's like a very weird mentality that I don't know when that started, because we used to be okay with this. But
no, you're right. Like Mega Man, I'm a huge Mega Man fan. Mega Man 2 through 6 are they're same games.
Yeah.
and specifically, if you want to get technical, 4, 5, and 6 are the same games because that's when you have like the super shot and the slide and all of that together. And they were releasing them every year and they're fucking awesome. Those games are better than most of anything on that console. And it doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel, especially when you're making, it's not like they're making a new, I imagine they'll have new animations in the Horizon VR game. It's a different game, a different character, a different perspective. I get mad when I see this sort of discourse because it's so detached from reality. Who are you to discuss gaming so confidently if you don't even understand it like that? You know, like you don't even, who are you to commentate like this if you don't understand it?
I can't believe Naughty Dog used Crash Bandicoot 2's model in Crash Bandicoot 3 a mere 9 months later. Unreal.
The sad part is that the people that normally do this kind of shit are doing it for console war related reasons, because it's like, oh, as if a Microsoft game studio has never reused an animation ever, right?
No,
like,
people are showing that with Gears and Halo, but the point is that of course they did. Who cares if the reload animations are the same or the chainsaw animations are the same? Yeah. It's like that chainsaw animation is iconic.
Yeah, it's great. Like, why would you redo? You'd be an idiot to be like, you know what? Let's try and redo like the most iconic imagery from this franchise just because for no
lazy
reason.
Developers.
Stupid.
$1 a month I want to pay for my games, and they better be great.
Every
lazy developer. All right. Andy wrote in and said, howdy, CDC. With Forbidden West on the horizon, it looks to be another stunning third-person story-driven entry from Sony. Colin, do you have any insights on how this specific genre became such a dominant piece for Sony? Where did these types of games come from, and why does Sony lean into them so much? I would love to know the history of Sony third-person games and why they are favored over FPS and other types of games. I think there's different theories to this. Before I say what my own is, I wonder if you guys have your own theories. Dustin, let's go to you first. Why do you think Sony has come? How do you think Sony came to these games and to realize that they can kind of corner this market in some way? I think in some way it was intentional, but I think in some way it isn't.
You have to imagine that a lot of this kind of stemmed from the just the explosion of Uncharted, right? Definitely. Specifically, I want to say Uncharted 2 was kind of really where it showed this format, whatever you want to say. Like, I remember Uncharted 2 was the game that made me go out and buy a PS3. That was the game. I was like, okay, this is one I have to play in order to do that. In order to, I have to check it out. So yeah. I feel like that might be the origin, and then you have games like Last of Us, of course. I'm trying to think though of like a conscious strategy from Sony. Like, where's the turning point where they said, okay, this is what we want to do now? Maybe Last of Us, kind of the tail end of the PS3 generation, is them thinking like, okay, well, instead of trying to do one of everything, let's nail this kind of slice here of third-person story-based action, which again, that comes back to what we were saying last week, and my argument was always is that they haven't focused on a shooter in an entire generation because they haven't needed to. They would rather just pay to have Call of Duty be the home of PlayStation instead of trying to compete with the best-selling game every year. So obviously that will change now, most likely. But I feel like it's I don't know, it's a double-edged sword. In one way, you have an identity of what people expect from your first party mostly. And it's clear that they're very, very good at that. But at the same time, I understand some of the criticism of thinking Sony makes one type of game over and over again. Even though I don't agree with it, I can at least understand and think it has some validity.
Yeah, I think it's valid as well. It depends on what you like. I think you're right. I think Uncharted is well, I think the real embryonic state of it might really be God of War. And then I think Uncharted showed them that, well, we can go less towards arcadey, kind of Devil May Cry type combat, and more towards this thing that we carve out that's much more story driven. And then I think, The Last of Us was very influential on that as well. Chris, what's your theory on on where this glut of games comes from that Sony is so well identified with and seems to embrace completely.
I mean, I think it obviously stems from The Last of Us. I don't think it actually has anything to do with Uncharted or God of War or anything. I think when you look at God of War and Uncharted, you know, and you look at other games that were around at that time, it's not necessarily, they were definitely done better, but they're not really all that different from the DNA of Tomb Raider or a litany of other third-person action adventure games that were around in the PS2 or early 360 generation. I think The Last of Us is really what kind of hit the nail on the head, where this is like a phenomenon. Everybody's talking about this. This is serious. This is art. This is, you know, this is what if video games, but Sam Elliott, you know, like basically like serious drama. And then, oh, that's kind of the formula now. Like you look at a lot of modern Sony first party games and I see way more Last of Us in God of War than Uncharted. You know, like I see way more, even in some of the more action oriented stuff like Horizon, you could see like even the camera is like a little bit closer. It's not exactly that far camera that you got in the earlier Uncharted games. It's that close up, like right there kind of perspective. And I think they just knew that if they could make games that echoed what many people were arguing was one of the best games of all time, then they had every reason to do that, especially when their competition just couldn't. Nintendo certainly wasn't going to do anything like that, you know, and Microsoft had no intention or even remote interest in doing something like that, not until recently. And then this is how many years later? A decade later? So nearly a decade later, I feel like that is really the genesis of a lot of the DNA that we see now. And yeah, I understand the criticism of, you know, a lot of these first party titles feel a little bit samey, because if your favorite game of all time isn't The Last of Us, then you're probably looking at Sony first party being like, yeah, it's good, it's really high quality, but it's not necessarily pulling me to it in the same way that, I don't know, maybe a lot of stuff on Nintendo is, or maybe a lot of even just multiplayer centric stuff might be on various platforms. And if, you know, if you don't like The Last of Us at all, I don't know what you've got to look forward to, really, because it's so prevalent in the DNA. I mean, you've got like obviously Gran Turismo and stuff like that. Not everything's just The Last of Us again, but there's no doubt in my mind.
They should call the third one that The Last of Us again.
The rest of us. I think there's no doubt in my mind, and I think you could even like objectively like analyze footage from games as they've like year after year and see a very specific shift in perspective and design, and even the way vignettes are framed, and even all these little like smaller elements of how Sony first party games are designed and track everything back to The Last of Us, even after Uncharted.
Yeah, well said. No matter what the answers are, and it's very compelling stuff you said, no matter what the answers might be, and if there even is a proper answer, there's no doubt that the seeds were set early because games just take so long to greenlight and make. So Sony, I would imagine Sony did deliberately do this, although you can make an argument that they just didn't. I don't think there's nothing not deliberate, sorry for the double negative, about them just saying no more Killzone, no more Resistance. But I think what they were looking at is, I hate doing this to people. I do this with the Vita jokingly with people where everyone's like, oh, man, I wish they'd come out with a handheld again. And I'm like, where the fuck were you, dude? Where were you? They did come out with one. And I kind of feel that way about Killzone and to a greater extent Resistance, because everyone's like, man, they should bring back Resistance. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, I know. And they're like, they should bring back Killzone. I'm like, yeah, I know. I don't know where you guys were when Resistance 3 only sold like 1.5 million copies or 2 million copies, or when Killzone Shadowfall, which was a great game, was continuously said like, oh no, this get boring. We want Call of Duty. Well, you got it.
Yeah.
And now everyone is like, well, I got to bring Killzone back. And it's like, I think you guys are a little schizophrenic, frankly. And, you know, I was there with all those games. I bought those games. I played those games. I championed those games in different ways in my different outlets and different things I was doing, and really liked them. And that's the thing that frustrates me the most is like, yeah, we're in this box, But there was a time when PlayStation wasn't in that box. Things were pretty good. We got games like Infamous, which I think more like we get Spider-Man now, right? We have Horizon and Days Gone and all that. That's great, but we had a lot of other stuff too. And my real hope is that people are like, well, will Sony... Well, let me save it. Let me actually save this particular analysis for the next story, because I think this will make a lot more sense actually here.
Colin, there's an important point I wanted to bring up real quick about this news item before we move on. I feel like it might be useful for the audience, is that so far they have not shown standard PS4 footage of this game. And I'm wondering if that's concerning at this point. They showed PS4 Pro footage. And so I just want to put that out there for for the audience to think about that's on base PS4, because listen, we love Guerrilla. They've made amazing games, but I don't think anyone should necessarily be given full 100% trust, especially when you have a game that looks this good coming out on hardware that's like getting close to a decade old. So I just feel like that's worth acknowledging, and especially if there are if when reviews come out and no one has played it on base PS4, red flag.
Yeah, be wary.
So don't necessarily run out and buy this day one if no one has seen this game on base PS4, and that's how you intend to play it.
But I will say this, that it'll be incumbent on the critics to play it on base PS4. If they don't get access to PS4 copies, which shouldn't also be allowed, because this should just all work on the PSN in such a way that they're making it pretty difficult out there. People have written in about it, about how they're being kind of cagey with the PS5 version and making people buy that. Like, you can't buy the PS4 version on PS5. You can't. You have to go on PS4 and buy it. So they're already doing weird Sony shit with it, which I'm skeptical of. But I think your concern is legitimate. Yet I wouldn't necessarily worry about it so long as they're willing to play it on PS4. So long as IGN and these others say, like, let's get out the fat 2013 PS4 and put it on there and see how it runs. And should there be something to worry about? I don't know. I hope not. I played Horizon or Zero Dawn on a PS4 Slim, and I think it was fine. So but I don't know. Who the hell knows?
I'm specifically thinking about how reviewers reviewed Cyberpunk on PC, got pretty decent scores. They showed off PS4 Pro version of it before launch, and we never saw the base version. And so it just, there's some similar key points going on here.
Sure. No doubt.
It's not an accusation. It's just an observation that I think that for those out there that may be buying it on that specific platform of base PS4 should be, aware of.
Yeah. Be wary.
Definitely. Let's marinate on it, because that's totally true. I haven't even really worried about it, because I'm like, of course I'm going to play the PS5 version.
Right.
But obviously that's not going to be an option for many. Okay. Number 2. We're all tired of talking about the Activision Microsoft deal, but there's something notable we need to take with us as we wind this story down for now. Call of Duty will remain on PlayStation platforms through at least 2023. Word comes by way of reporting from Bloomberg, who noted that Sony had penned Call of Duty related deals with Activision concerning 3 games in that 2-year time span: Modern Warfare 2 from Infinity Ward, Treyarch's Call of Duty project for 2023, and a sequel to the free-to-play mega hit Warzone led by Raven. So much for Raven doing something else. Beyond that, Bloomberg sources note that no one really knows what to expect, even internally. However, with 2021's two top-selling games on PlayStation platforms being Call of Duty entries, this is a hugely consequential situation for Sony, which may either get a Minecraft-like deal, in which Microsoft kept Minecraft and everything related to it on PlayStation, even as we remember Minecraft Dungeons, where it still is today, or something more like Bethesda, which releases older titles like Skyrim on PS5, which won't receive the likes of Starfield. As we've noted, Sony told the Wall Street Journal following the deal that it, quote, expects that Microsoft will abide by contractual agreements and continue to ensure Activision games are multi-platform, end quote. This suggests that there are more deals yet between the two companies. And I'm surprised that I haven't been seeing more people talk about that, because they say contractual agreements and continue to ensure Activision games, not Call of Duty games, are multi-platform. This suggests that there are more deals yet between the companies, but anything involving Call of Duty would, of course, be most consequential. And as we discussed last week, this follows a tweet from Xbox head Phil Spencer in which he wrote, quote, had good calls this week with leaders at Sony. I confirmed our intent to honor all existing agreements upon acquisition of Activision Blizzard and our desire to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. Sony is an important part of our industry and we value our relationship, end quote. Call of Duty first launched on PC in 2003 and spanning 18 entries in the core series developed by a constellation of developers soon to be under Xbox's control, has sold nearly 450 million copies lifetime. It's the most famous American gaming property in industry history and one of the most lucrative. I will also just point out that the 2 top best-selling games on PlayStation platforms in 2021 were Call of Duty. So there's that. Now, Chris, let's go to you. How are you feeling about this? We now have essential confirmation that the next 2 mainline Call of Duty games, as well as Warzone 2 or whatever will come in place of Warzone, which apparently might be a next generation only version of Warzone, which is pretty interesting, will be on PlayStation. I read Phil Spencer's tweets about Call of Duty more like I read the situation with Minecraft, in which I don't think they're going to take Call of Duty away. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, I just don't see that. I think what they're going to do is say Call of Duty is free on Xbox Game Pass. It is free, or whatever for your subscription.
For sure, yeah.
But I just think that they look at it too. I think it's dangerous. Like, I think there's too much at play here. It's not Bethesda. It's more like Minecraft, where I think that they saw the situation as it was, and we're like, we got to just continue to play ball here. And the reason that I think more Call of Duty games will come after the deal is, again, because I think that Minecraft Dungeon, and we talked about it at the time, when they released Minecraft Dungeons on PlayStation, I was like, that's weird, isn't it? And no, I felt like no one thought it was, but I was like, that's weird.
It is weird, yeah.
And so I think that it indicates more that Call of Duty will be treated like this. But what do you think about at least the confirmation that Call of Duty fans on PlayStation, at least in the near term, have nothing to fear?
Well, I mean, I think it's good. I think it's wise on their part. I also agree with you that I think Call of Duty will probably continue to be on PlayStation in perpetuity, even beyond 2023. I think there will not be a time where you might see like weird spin-offs. I wouldn't be surprised to see that, like maybe like a weird, like a Call of Duty exclusive, like extra game. I don't know what that would be really, but I could see that happening maybe in the near future, that's like exclusive to Xbox and PC. I could see that. But I do think your annualized releases are probably going to stay multi-platform, simply because this isn't a Bethesda situation where, again, the last Elder Scrolls game was
2011.
11 years ago.
Yeah.
The last Fallout game the last real Fallout game was a while ago.
2015.
PlayStation is used to not having these games anyway. Honestly, like, what are you really missing? What really changes in the grand scheme of the industry if the Elder Scrolls or Fallout become exclusive? Not really much, because these are infrequently releasing titles. But when you have a game like Call of Duty that kind of becomes a bit of a rhythm for the industry, that becomes kind of a cadence, that becomes a way, way harder association to break. Like, you can't just be like, oh, 2023 happens, and then suddenly PlayStation just no longer has Call of Duty. Like, that is not something that a lot of players are going to be able to swallow easily. That is not something that is going to come across well, PR-wise. I think the nature of the annualization of Call of Duty itself has kind of protected it from being this series that is even remotely under threat of being exclusive to Xbox, because it's become such a synonymous cadence that's associated with the entirety of the industry that I don't think you can really sever that and still come out looking like the good guy.
What do you think, Dustin?
I'm really intrigued by the wordage around from Sony about Activision Blizzard games. And Colin, you alluded to there being potentially other deals outside of the Call of Duty deal that we've outlined with the next 3 games. I'm wondering what this could mean in a literal sense. Is it possible that there's some kind of deal with a game like Diablo 4? Maybe PlayStation bought marketing rights for, when there's an ad somewhere, it says buy on PlayStation or something. Kind of
Diablo
like
3, I think, had a deal with PlayStation, as I recall.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
And then
I think it's also fair to say that Overwatch will also be multi-platform.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be cross-platform with the original, and it would make no sense if
I agree.
So there's a lot of multi-platform games coming.
Right. And I mean, there's stuff, who knows? I mean, the sky's really the limit with Sony. Before we even knew about a bunch of games like Deathloop and Starfield or whatever, was going around and trying to buy future timed exclusives. Who knows? Maybe they bought something from Blizzard. There's a story about them building a new IP right now or something, which I'm not saying it's that. I'm just saying that hypothetically.
Well,
so,
that it's interesting. Not that they would. The deal's not done yet, so they're not going to talk like that necessarily.
Right.
But I did note in that announcement for that new IP at Blizzard that they're like, it's coming to PC and consoles. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay. I mean, here's where I want to get back to what I was saying earlier, where I cut myself off about Killzone and Resistance. The thing here is that, let's say that the worst happens for Sony and that they do say, like, we're taking Call of Duty now away. And this is going to be a massively consequential situation for Sony. The good news is, if they know that's going to happen, and they probably have some sort of indication that it's going to happen, although one way or the other, although my assumption is that they've probably left it to say, like, let's visit this after we buy the company. And so I think that they've probably put a pin in it. They can't, I don't think, even legally talk very deeply about the hypotheticals. But I wonder if they look at it and they say, listen, we have the rest of 2022, the rest of 2023, and we also technically have the rest of 2024 until we might be without Call of Duty. If we act now, we can get things in motion that may not be done in time, probably won't be, but would be done around 2024, 2025, 2026 to start to withstand some of that potential damage. And that's where I wonder if they're kind of going behind the scenes and saying, like, we need to start getting these things greenlit and into motion so that we can just start perhaps defending ourselves from potential damage, from the potential, again, of losing this IP, because we just don't know what's going to happen. But I was also reading that Sony, which makes way more money than Xbox, or more money than Microsoft on gaming, I should say, makes, a few $100 million on Call of Duty every year. It's a lot of money, but it's not going to break them. And I think that it's been overstated a little bit in that regard too. But the other thing that I wanted to point out before we move on is just, I think that this puts a fine point on what I was saying last week and on other shows, that this pipe dream that people have, that Activision's studios are going to work on other products, is just, I don't understand why people think that that's going to happen, apart from maybe little spin-off tearaway like teams that, and I mean capital T tearaway like teams that make little products. But Microsoft is buying the machinery of Call of Duty. We know if Warzone is in progress, that means Raven is making it. And they're not going to say, Raven, now you're going to go make Singularity 2. I just think that people are kind of overstating that aspect of it. And if there's anything good that came from the Microsoft acquisition of Activision, or good comes from it, it's that the IP are liberated, not the teams, but that they can say, oh yeah, we can do something with these now elsewhere. But I don't necessarily expect that those teams are going to be working on those games. I think those teams are going to be making Call of Duty. And I don't know, at least for the next few years, I would shrug off this idea that it's going to go any other way. But I do think that the idea that they've been bandying about inside at Activision before the purchase is true, that I think Call of Duty is going to stop being annualized under Microsoft. And that might allow these teams to liberate themselves, but that's years away.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. And by the way, just one more thing, when you make a purchase like Activision Blizzard, you're relying on the revenue from that. If you just cut that off and restructure all the teams, what did you even buy at that point? I don't even know. What did you... Activision's IP there's a few really valuable ones, and then there's a bunch of crap too. So I'm skeptical of how this is all going to go, but at least we know for now, for PlayStation fans that play Call of Duty, you won't have anything to worry about until 2024 at the earliest. Number 3, are you tired of Star Wars? Too bad. Because publisher Electronic Arts and developer Respawn are developing not 1, not 2, but 3 new Star Wars games. Word comes by way of EA and Respawn, which published a letter to the audience announcing the news. One of the games we already know a little about, and we expect it may get released as soon as this fall. A sequel to 2019's surprisingly good Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I'm sure they don't reuse any assets in that game, by the way. In addition to that project, Respawn is also working on a Star Wars FPS, though it's unclear if it'll be single player, multiplayer, or both. And finally, Respawn is helping to produce an externally developed Star Wars strategy game led by a new EA second-party team called BitReactor. Such an aggressive investment on EA's part is interesting. For some decade until recently, EA locked in the Star Wars license in the AAA realm and proceeded to largely squander the opportunity. 4 EA-made Star Wars games of consequence launched during this time of exclusivity. DICE's controversial 2015 online-only shooter Battlefront, the 2017 follow-up Battlefront 2, both sold huge, by the way, the aforementioned Fallen Order in 2019, and finally 2020's dogfighting Star Wars Squadrons, also from Motive. Fallen Order was the only Respawn Star Wars project during this time, arguably the least important, but certainly the best of the bunch. Respawn, founded in 2010 and purchased outright by EA in 2017, is best known for its pair of Titanfall games, launched in 2004 and 2016, as well as the 2019 free-to-play spin-off, Apex Legends. Ethan Barcelos wrote in and said, hello, BBC DC. In confirmation that Respawn is working on a whopping 3 Star Wars games, I find it peculiar, that Disney has revoked EA's exclusivity deal with Star Wars while simultaneously doubling down with their partnership. Were these games in development before Disney chose to open Star Wars up to other studios, or perhaps Respawn has restored Disney's faith in EA due to the success of Jedi Fallen Order? I think it's the latter. I think EA is very happy to continue to do business with Disney and vice versa on Respawn games. It's clear that Disney has no interest in DICE or Motive working on Star Wars. And obviously there are now Star Wars games announced outside, like Quantic Dreams games. Ubisoft is doing a Star Wars game, etc. So, right, Ubisoft's doing a Star Wars game, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
So let's start with you, Dustin, on this one. 3 new Star Wars games. This, to me, is... I don't even understand what Star Wars is anymore. I think this goes into the business reality of what I was saying about people with Microsoft are saying, well, they have so much money. And I'm like, that's not impressive. Having money is not impressive. Having Star Wars and buying Star Wars is not impressive. Doing something good with Star Wars is impressive. And I think Disney has largely failed at doing things that are interesting with Star Wars, and cannot believe how they've just mismanaged so many aspects of this entire thing. And it's become part of this amorphous, nameless, formless, soulless blob that is Disney, that I can't even believe is the same company that I grew up watching and their iconic movies and being like, oh man, Disney's got such they love quality and they love consistency and they try to do it right. And they save themselves by really coming back from this dark period Dagan always talks about on Knockback and making this smattering of 80s and 90s flicks. And now they just suck. And Star Wars is just in that horrible corporate space where I feel like nothing about it is exciting anymore. And I hate to be so negative about it, but I just don't understand why people want more and more and more of the same things from the same worlds and all of this. So anyway, I'm going on and on. Dustin, what do you think?
Shout out, first of all, to George Lucas, who literally on camera said that he sold Star Wars to the white slavers, right?
Right. Yeah, he did.
Just an absolute savage move to say that. But yeah, I have so many mixed feelings about this because on one sense, I just like Marvel don't want a saturation of Star Wars games. But at the same time, I'm a little more open to Star Wars than I am Marvel. And that's a personality and personal taste thing overall. But Respawn did a fantastic job with Fallen Order. I think the second one will most likely be even better than the first one. So that's good. A Respawn Star Wars shooter, also very relevant to my interests. So I also really like that. Then I think about at the same time, we got Knights of the Old Republic, this Ubisoft one, the Quantic Dreams Star Wars game. There's just a lot in the pipeline. And I was trying to think back, and I'm like, we did have a lot of Star Wars games a while ago. That there were multiple Star Wars releases, sometimes in a year. So I don't know, maybe it's just a return to form in that sense. And so ultimately, if they all end up being high quality, excellent games as opposed to Battlefront 2, which I know they turned around, but think overall just about how that was a total mess. I don't know if I really have too much room to complain, really. So it's exciting in one sense, and also thinking about just how talented of a team Respawn is. I hate to see them become the Star Wars Apex team. And I know that all the Titanfall fans out there are kind of sad that it seems like they're going to be locked up for a very long time. And I think we can forget about Titanfall 3 at this point.
Yeah. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. I think so. It's strange. I just don't get, I used to love Star Wars. I loved it.
Me
I
too, dude.
loved it so much when I was a kid. Those You had 3 movies, you had like the original EU and the toys and everything. And I'm not trying to be like all nostalgic for it, but it just felt so limited. Like there were these special items, like these movies, these limited things, and everything was built around them. And now, so long after, I just feel like it's a husk. What is Star Wars? What is it? What does it even mean anymore? I don't know what the story is anymore. What are they trying to tell us about it? Just seems like it's Disney Plus fodder and video game fodder and pop culture fodder and whatever they can do. And I still find it weird that the most successful projects under the Disney reign were the 2 spinoffs that a lot of people didn't like, but that I thought were truest to what Star Wars was, which was Rogue One and Solo. I thought those movies were awesome, not only because they told relevant stories, but they were within what we understand as Star Wars. Star Wars isn't just a galaxy of things. That's boring. That's like saying Battlestar Galactica is about the galaxy. It's like, no, it's not. Battlestar Galactica is about these humans and these robots. The galaxy is the setting. Not everything that happens in the setting is interesting or relevant or important. And I'm so, as much as I liked Fallen Order, the other thing about Fallen Order is Fallen Order was really good, but I don't think it was like, I wasn't blown away by Fallen Order by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't the game where I was like, oh my God. I think a lot of us were, I felt a lot about that game the way I felt about episode 7, which I was like, oh, thank God you didn't fuck it up.
Right.
And and ended up being pretty good. But that's, I know I'm ranting, but I feel for Star Wars because I'm like, what the fuck did you do to my baby boy? What did you do to him?
And instead, now we've got Boba Fett, who's back from the dead. I don't know what is going on with that show.
I don't even want to know. Also, people are going to get mad if we spoil it, so just...
I've heard nothing good about it.
Apparently, the recent episode was good because it has something people remember in it. Some kind of...
it was like... look, it's... it literally is. I mean, I get... Because it's like, it's Dengar, or something like... something stupid. It's like, oh my God. Who cares? Anyway, Chris, how are you feeling about all this? I'm particularly interested, actually, because of your great love for, the first-person shooter genre, and wanting to see a lot of different kinds of ideas, fluidity, gameplay styles, settings.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a waste because they're one of the most talented in the industry.
Yeah, no, I think whatever... I'm kind of like you in my reception of Fallen Order, where it didn't like blow me away or anything, but I think what impressed me more about it was the fact that like, wow, this studio's never made a game like this, and they executed it pretty damn well. Like I think far better than it would be expected of a lot of other studios
Definitely.
who might have been known for, I mean, it's hard to say because it's entirely hypothetical, but I don't know if Bungie could have done something like that. Like it's such a completely different. It's such a 180 from what their MO is. So that impressed me, but it as a game didn't like blow me away. I don't even think I finished it. I was just but again, I'm not really a Star Wars person. So Star Wars doesn't draw me because of the license. Do I think Respawn will make a kick-ass Star Wars FPS? No doubt. I think that's going to be super exciting. And it's probably the only thing I'm looking forward to in this whole ordeal. But I mean, it's got to suck to be a Star Wars fan in a lot of ways right now, where just like everything feels so dire. But at the same time, this liberation of the IP, specifically in the world of games, I think has a lot more potential than, that IP in film or television. I think film or television, it has been around for so long. There's such a formula. There's such a limitation of genres. Like, I don't know what the difference is between Boba Fett and The Mandalorian as television shows. Like, I look at clips of them and they look the same. But, Battlefront 2 does not look like Fallen Order, does not look like Squadrons. I think you're going to get a lot of really, really interesting stuff out of this because more studios have the opportunity to make their mark on this series. And while it doesn't make me happy to know that so many developers are kind of working in the same sandbox, I would rather see new things happening. I as exciting as a Wolverine game is, I would like to see Insomniac do something that's theirs. And vice versa with a bunch of other properties and other talented developers that are working on them. I do think this avenue being in the realm of games, has the highest potential to yield really, really quality, really quality experiences. I've heard nothing but good things about Squadrons, even though that's like a very hyper specific thing. Jedi Fallen Order was great. Respawn making a Star Wars first person shooter, that's awesome. And I don't know. I'm optimistic about it, but I'm saying that as somebody who isn't a diehard fan of the franchise, who hasn't seen it go through God knows how many ups and downs.
It's hard for me to, I don't want to say like, what's the bad influence on Star Wars with EA? Was it Motive? Was it because Motive did, of course, Battlefront 2 and and Squadrons? Then you had DICE with the Battlefront games. And clearly, all we know for sure is that Respawn wasn't responsible for whatever the hell was going on with that. And it's so strange that DICE is continuously, especially with Battlefront 2042 now, why is this, where does the respect for this studio, lingering respect for the studio, even come from? I'm not even really sure where it comes from. They were great once.
It's just the legacy of Battlefield as an IP, I think. That's it.
Reminds me of a different studio EA has. BioWare.
Oh, BioWare. Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah. All right. Well, let's be a little more positive here, because I think that there are ways to explore Star Wars in the way a lot of the earliest games did on PC and others, where, they might make sense. Where it's, for instance, when I watched the movie Solo, I was like, oh, it's a Star Wars movie. There's Han Solo, right? So, we're maybe looking for something like that. That would be kind of interesting. Daxter Days wrote in and said, evening, gents. With Respawn now working on more Star Wars titles, what would you like to see them tackle with this massive IP? I personally would like a Clone Wars era Gears of War like cover shooter, maybe focusing on the Bad Batch. I don't know. I want a game about Boba Fett. And I'm like, God almighty, please don't. We almost got a game about Boba Fett, Star Wars 1313. Actually, new footage of that leaked just recently. I don't know if you saw it, and see what you could have had. And it was pretty impressive. Of course, friend of the show, Gio Corsi, was working on that game at a high level. A lot of interesting stories about that game. I don't know. I will say that having some sort of the idea, which I think Battlefront wanted to kind of touch on with its multiplayer aspects and stuff, of touching the Battle of Hoth, touching the Battle of Endor, the battle over Yavin, and all these different things. These are obviously really consequential moments. I always love the idea, and I don't think people would really dig it, and it might be what Squadrons got closest to, is to just kind of participate without being in the story. There's so much chaos going on around these things that you can pull in very relevant and interesting stories. Again, that's why I loved Rogue One so much, because I think Rogue One is arguably maybe the greatest Star Wars movie, is because it's like, wow, this is what Star Wars can be. This is how you can do it. This is how you make it work. The AT-ATs on the beach. Oh my God. So I want to see something ancillary to one of these big events, instead of spinning out more and more from the center, in which I become less and less interested. The more and more, like, there are characters in these new Star Wars movies, I'm like, I don't even know who any of these characters are. Like Captain Phasma was a really good example. What a cool idea. Female, silver-cladded stormtrooper officer. And they just don't do anything with it. So what's the point of even introducing her and tantalizing me? Let's go back to
because they have to sell toys. They have to sell toys, Colin.
That's true. So
that's it.
What do you think, Chris? Let's start with you. Is there something specific you think might be interesting for them thematically to visit, or genre-wise?
Yeah. I want a pixel art RPG, Greedo Path Traveler.
That'd be all.
And you play as Greedo, and the whole point is to get to that little place where he gets shot.
Mos Eisley Cantina. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
it ends with him shooting first, of course, and then getting.
Yeah, of course. And you get to see his head like do that weird, oh my God, skip 8 frames and just like jolt to the side super quickly, unsettlingly. No, I don't know. I'll be real. Like I don't know much about the actual lore or even story. It's been a long time since I've even seen these Star Wars movies. So like, I don't know if I have necessarily like a place in time or an era that I care to see, but I've always been a fan of what you were talking about, just the idea of like kind of like touching on these, like, cause I know about Hoth and I know about Endor and I vaguely, so just to play in that playground would be fun. And I think that's what Battlefront did pretty well. I think it's what a lot of these licensed games that aren't necessarily movie-based games do really well. I remember back in the day, like one of my favorite things. It's a pretty janky game by today's standards, but I had a lot of fun with Lord of the Rings Conquest for that exact reason. It was just like, hey, these like historic Lord of the Rings battles, and you're just set loose and you get to fight in these incredible play spaces. And the more they can touch on those aspects, like almost like you're contributing to the universe in the sense that you're almost a character in it, but you don't have you're not like the chosen one, or like you don't have I always hated destiny as a concept.
Oh yeah.
Which is one of the main reasons it's hard for me to get into Star Wars, I think. But I think that's fun, like treating it as if it's real, treating it as if it's like real history, and just sort of placing yourself in it to view it from the ground up. Definitely. I think it's like really fun.
Definitely. Like, I don't know, Dustin, I'm curious what you think. What comes to mind for me is one of the cool things that happens in Empire. The beginning of the first sequences in Empire are awesome when Luke's out there, then Han finds him. I love Han using the lightsaber, which is like one of my favorite scenes because it's so weird. And it would be cool, the probe droid comes, they spot the base. Obviously, that's relayed to Vader. But it would be cool if maybe they the Imperials dispatch some sort of ground team to investigate, like some small, and maybe you're like one of the people in this small detachment that is like trying to just get better information on Hoth. And maybe it's an 8 or 10 hour Metal Gear Solid type game. Or maybe there's like a Battle of Endor. I love the Battle of Endor. It's super, super cool. Maybe you're just one of the guys in one of the platoons that the rebels put down on the base, and you have a 15-hour first-person shooter where you're just seeing the events, but different things are happening, different important things that maybe we didn't know about, all of that. See, I think fleshing out those things are more interesting than, because Chris, you're saying like you don't like Destiny. I'm generally the same. That's why it's so weird where everything seems to be leading up to this climactic thing with Luke and Vader. And then the next movies are just like, oh no, that's going to happen again, basically. It didn't happen for a really long time. Everything was fine for many, many years. Now it's just all chaos forever in the same exact mirror image of what just happened. And it removes the entire, it's almost like a Jesus story that's happening again. And you're like, but we already have a Jesus, right? Like we already had the Lord come down and the weird situation and the Force ghosts, and I don't know. I'm just so tired of seeing this thing that I loved. That's kind of unintentionally like true to life too, because you have like, how many religions kind of based on the same old shit, like kind of constantly props up again as new things. Sure. Flood mythology. I don't know. Definitely. Finally, Chris Storama wrote into us and he says, "Hey CDC, can we talk about Respawn co-founder Vince Zampella for a second? What happened? What did I miss?"
You skipped me.
Oh, I did.
You had started to ask me about what.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let's cut then.
Okay.
Let's cut. No, we have to cut.
Okay. A literal cut in the video.
Cut. Okay, back to you, Dustin.
Okay. My ideal Star Wars game.
Sorry,
I was getting excited about this. That's why I feel like I needed to.
No, I apologize. That was rude of me. I got off on a tangent.
No, Colin, it was not rude because it was you weren't intentionally doing anything. Okay, I realized that my dream Star Wars game is just very similar, somewhat, to a game that already exists. It's just Star Warsified. I don't know if Respawn would be the team to make this, but I would want a Star Wars game that takes place on Coruscant that is basically cyberpunk. Really, imagine no force powers. First of all, get rid of that. But yeah, I've always thought that I love the smaller characters of Star Wars, the smaller situation. We talked about Max Rebo and stuff like that. Imagine you go and there's like a bar and you pick up a mission from the piano player there, and he wants you to go investigate this gang or whatever. And so I guess it would be a way to really explore the oddities of the Star Wars universe in I don't think it needs to be like a GTA style open world, but some kind of city landscape with all the types of criminals. Yeah. Criminals and good guys and whatever.
Or Mos Eisley would be perfect, really. I mean,
Oh
or something
yeah,
on Tatooine. With the
right.
because actually one of the most interesting aspects of Star Wars to me was always the crime element, and Jabba the Hutt is like the dude. I fucking love Jabba the Hutt. I don't know how anyone could absolutely not love that entire scene in Return of the Jedi from
Yeah.
stem to stern. It is so good. And maybe doing something with him would be cool too, because there's so much intimated about him, even in episode 1 when he's there at the race and all of that. Maybe working with him, maybe a Bib Fortuna simulator, huh?
Whoa.
Bib Fortuna, a little deep cut. Salacious Crumb, also one of the great Jabba the Hutt characters as well.
Indeed. But yeah, that's
All right.
it.
No, fair enough. I'm sorry I skipped you. Now I will get back to Chris Stromer, who says, "Hey
Yes.
CDC, can we talk about Respawn co-founder Vince Zampella for a second? After the disastrous launch of Battlefield 2042, he was put in charge of EA to oversee by EA to oversee the future of Battlefield universe. This week's Star Wars game announcements came with the news that he'll also oversee all 3 projects Respawn's working on. Does this man hold too much power?" My answer is no, because Vince Zampella is one of the very few people that has proven himself over time. Vince Zampella was the executive producer of the original Call of Duty. Vince Zampella was the founder of Respawn, right? He founded Infinity Ward. He's the exact kind of person that you want in charge of this. Is he going over his skis? I have no idea. But when I see that name associated with stuff, we were making fun of things with Respawn. Remember when they just randomly announced the Star Wars game, which ended up being Fallen Order, like just at E3 in the audience? It was like so unplanned.
He was like sitting down.
Yeah, it was so weird. but he, when I see his name, I don't lack confidence at all. Vince Zampella, God, man, yeah, it's so interesting to think back about it. Remember when EA and Activision were kind of like maybe going to go to court, and Activision was claiming that EA had kind of goaded them away from Infinity Ward, and there's a lot of beef there. EA fought hard for this guy because they believed in him, and so it's not a huge surprise to me that one of the few people that has delivered the goods, and Respawn, I think, has delivered the goods. I think Titanfall 1 was soft, but everyone that liked the multiplayer aspect kept playing it. Titanfall 2 obviously was much bigger. Apex Legends, much bigger yet. Respawn then did Fallen Order. Of course, this is the guy you want in charge. So I have no problem with this. What do you think, Chris?
No, absolutely. I think, man, what a main character name also.
Definitely.
Just Vince Zampella is like it just sounds like somebody who knows how to get shit done. And yeah, like I remember that lawsuit because that's how we learned about the structure of what Destiny would be.
Right.
That was when those initial Destiny Comet expansions were initially announced for like a year before they were actually going to come out. But yeah, I don't think it's very possible that this dude is maybe a little bit in over his head, but at the same time, I'm not worried about it. I feel like, who do you trust if not somebody who's just constantly delivered, I feel like at a certain point, you kind of owe the benefit of the doubt in this circumstance, especially if it's a good track record, man. Like it's inarguable.
No, I totally agree. And I'll also just say that, first of all, people should go back and read all that stuff. 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011.
It was like 2011. I think.
It was after that, because 2008 is like Modern Warfare 2 or Modern Warfare. Yeah. So yeah, it's like 2010, 2011. What ended up happening was that the guys that founded Infinity Ward, what was the other guy, Jason West?
2012.
What would you say? 2012?
May 2012.
Right. It's very similar to the Apple Epic thing, where what ended up happening was all of this interesting information that had nothing to do with them came out. And the court, very similar to the Apple and Epic thing, didn't think anyone would really care. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? And we of course leaked Destiny at IGN. That was a huge story at our site, and they were so mad. But this was one of those things where the streams kind of cross, and one side doesn't really understand that what they know or what they're releasing is actually really important to a group of nerds. And it obviously Apple and Epic, same kind of thing, which was so fascinating. But I think, Dustin, in throwing it over to you, I think that if anything, we should have a little bit of faith in him, because if you know anything about Vince Zampella, he's not a creative. He's a producer. He was the producer of Call of Duty. And that's a really important role. That's the organizational maestro that makes games function and makes teams work with each other and puts things together and schedules everything and hits milestones. So you want producers in these roles. You don't necessarily want creatives in these roles because they're much different in terms of that. So I think everything points up for him. I wouldn't be surprised if he ascends to the C-suite at Electronic Arts one day. So what do you make of his inclusion, his very heavy inclusion in all of this?
I'm just curious what is a day in the life of Vince Zampella right now? You mentioned about him being a producer type position. And so you have to imagine that he's kind of the guy in some of the higher level meetings, like, okay, like an ideas guy. So to not necessarily the creative ideas, but like you said, he's in the war room. He's figuring out all the pieces on the board and figuring out what direction people need to go in. And so I think there is some legitimate concerns about overstretching this guy out, making sure that he, with the responsibility of Battlefield and his own teams at Respawn, that's a lot to handle. So hopefully he's able to do that and stay up to the task.
We'll see. I'm optimistic about his inclusion, and he's one of the few bright spots at EA right now, I think. All right, number 4. February's PlayStation Plus games have been announced, and they're unlikely to blow you away. For the uninitiated, if you are a PlayStation Plus subscriber, you get access to a set of so-called free games each month. Even if you don't intend on playing these games now or possibly ever, you should still add them to your download list since you can play them later so long as your account is active. On PlayStation 5, players will get Planet Coaster, the roller coaster tycoon-like title first released on PlayStation in 2020. However, you will not have access to the PS4 version, only the PS5 version for whatever reason. So that's the PS5 game. It won't work in backwards compatibility. You can't download it on PS4. Over on PlayStation 4, there are 2 more games to get. The 2020 EA Sports MMA game, UFC 4, and the prequel Borderlands 2 DLC launched late in 2021 called Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon's Keep, a Wonderland's one-shot adventure, which is basically acting as an advertisement for RPG FPS Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which comes to PS4 and PS5 on March 25th. Zach Capuzzo wrote in and said, "Hi, boys. What's up with these half-assed PS Plus games lately? I know, another comment bitching about the games of the month, but after Godfall Challenger Edition and now Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon's Keep, a $10 standalone DLC, I really hate to see a trend of offering gimped versions of full games for free. This is like getting The Last of Us Left Behind instead of the full Last of Us Remastered. Plus, they already gave away the entire Borderlands Handsome Collection years ago. Why not just give us Borderlands 3 for free? I know it's marketing the new game, but what a weak selection." Man, people are up in arms about this one. And I have to say, Chris, when I first saw it, I saw it on PlayStation's Twitter account. Like I was just kind of scrolling through my feed and I saw Tiny Tina's Assault. I go, oh shit, they're giving away that game for free, like a day and date kind of thing. I didn't know when exactly it was coming out. But then it ends up being like the Borderlands 2 DLC. That's teasing. Yeah. I was like, oh man.
And DLC from the previous game.
Now Planet Coaster, by all accounts, is supposed to be excellent. And UFC 4 is a pretty good game too. And I'll remind people, last month it was Dirt 5, which is a very well-respected racing game, Persona 5 Strikers, which is a popular Musou, Deep Rock Galactic, which was a new game when it was on PS Plus. The month before, you had like Lego DC, Superheroes, Mortal Shell, Godfall, like we said, and then all the PSVR games the month before, plus First Class Trouble, Knockout City, and The Persistence from Fire Sprite, Kingdoms of Amalur, Re-Reckoning. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's been awful, but it is certainly looking worse and worse next to, right now on Game Pass, not that they're apples and oranges, but right now on Game Pass, they're playing, the new Tom Clancy game. And it just kind of looks weak, doesn't it?
Yeah, but again, like they're not the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing a little bit softer focuses lately because there are Spartacus negotiations in the works. And that probably has something to do with it because you don't want to have like overlap. You don't want to be like, hey, you get I don't know, X game that came out this year for free, and then a couple months later it's like, hey, it's on this service. It's like, oh well, you're not really offering me anything then because I already have all this stuff because of PlayStation Plus. Assuming that's the way they're going with Spartacus, we still don't know. Granted, but it's hard for me to judge these specific things because so much of so much of the quality of a video game is up to personal preference and taste. Like, I am never going to play a UFC game in my life. Like, I'm just not going to. But I'm sure people who play them would probably say that that's a pretty damn good game. And Planet Coaster doesn't appeal to me at all, but apparently it's fantastic. So it's, it's just one of these situations where, yeah, this might be a really, really soft month for you, but somebody out there is like, whoa, perfect. Maybe not the Borderlands. That's a weird one.
I mean, it's not weird. It's not weird in the sense that it's so transparent. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. Like, oh, here's this DLC that teases our $70 or $60 game that comes out in March.
Right.
Again, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, just give the game away. Now, I know it's not that easy. It's expensive. But they're not even putting any first or second party games in these things recently. So they could do whatever they want with those. That's another unusual thing. I don't know.
Well, I think that I think, again, that's probably a Spartacus thing.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. They could be between a rock and a hard place. You might be right. Dustin, what are your thoughts on the recent PlayStation Plus offerings? And again, Chris is right. It's not apples to oranges. The comparison would be Xbox games with gold or whatever, which are always awful. I mean, laughably bad. Right. And I don't even know where they're pulling some of this shit out. Where I see some of these games and I'm like, what? What the fuck is that?
Let me look it up.
Yeah, so it's certainly worse on that end, but that's not really where Xbox's head is at anymore. So I'm surprised they even do that at all. What do you think of PlayStation Plus's offerings?
I'm kind of feeling two separate thoughts that I think work together. The Tiny Tina thing sucks, and I think that Zach brings up a great point about the Godfall Challenger Edition. I mean, it's included with your subscription, and there's some months that are really, really good, so it evens out. I get that, but it just feels cheap to give you what feels like a glorified demo. So that's the one thought. The other thought is that I think that these titles, particularly Planet Coaster and UFC, make sense that these are both, I don't know if niche is the right word, but they are for particular audiences, and those audiences will be pleased and other people won't have any interest in them at all. Particularly, those titles make sense on a month when you have huge releases coming out and people, do you need to blow your load on an awesome PS Plus month when everyone's going to buy Horizon? They're getting ready. Well, I guess Elden Ring isn't quite yet, but pretty soon, the real big games are starting. So why give someone a reason to play something that's not $70, go out and buy Horizon from a business perspective? So I'm okay with these lighter months here and there that may not appeal particularly to me. And like I said, with Horizon coming out, it's, even if it was something I really wanted, I don't even know if I would get to it right now. So why not give something that appeals to the more sports minded with UFC and something more niche with Planet Coaster? That makes sense.
Yeah, well, that does make a lot of sense. But we could be on the Xbox ecosystem enjoying Space Invaders Infinity Gene.
Oh man, that was a Square Enix game, wasn't it? Or God, I remember
doesn't say
that
on the box. I don't know.
Yeah,
I saw those today, and I was like, I don't know if I heard of any of the games with gold.
I played that game.
No, me. Yeah.
I think I was on
Space
PS.
Invaders.
Yeah, it's not good over there, but it's not great with us either. I think you guys are right. I think Chris, you're definitely right. There's something up. Also, but at the same time, God, you were bringing up Elden Ring, not really a great example, but something like that. It would be so badass if Sony just came out one month and was like, that game is free on PlayStation Plus. Like that
would be crazy.
Game that you guys are all talking about, we paid $50 million to make it free, right? Like, so, that would be wild. And I don't think they're going to do any moves like that, unfortunately. All right, let's move on. We have some hiring stuff that we need to talk about, then some more gold game talk. Let's get through the hiring stuff first. Number 5. Sony-owned Team London Studio is not so quietly hiring for a new game. In fact, they're creating a whole new internal team under the brand to create an online PlayStation 5 game. Word comes by way of the studio's website, which leads to a ton of open positions across art, design, production, operations, QA, tech, and more. In other words, everything you need for a team. Now, depending on what you're looking for, this game may end up being a disappointment. It sounds like it's going to be a game as a service. but we don't know for sure and likely won't for a couple of years. London studio, founded 20 years ago as an internal Sony team, has largely flown under the radar, but has contributed important games to PlayStation's stable over the years, particularly for mainstream and casual audiences. Their first game was the original entry in PlayStation's defunct first-party soccer game, This Is Football. I hadn't thought of that in so long. But are perhaps best known for a myriad of SingStar karaoke games and iToy camera games on PS2, PS3, and PSP. In the last 10 years, their production has slowed down wildly, however, as they've concentrated on external projects for the most part, as part of XDev. PS4's SingStar Celebration, launched in 2017, is the team's last console game, while its well-liked 2019 PSVR game, Blood and Truth, is its most recent title. The opportunities here, Dustin, let's start with you, are pretty interesting. I don't know what the hell they're going to do. Sony London will need to hire different kinds of people. They don't have a team made for what we would probably be looking for. But I'm wondering, like, when I look at stuff like SingStar and some of the other stuff that they were known for, one part of me is like, why wouldn't you just pursue SingStar like as a platform on PlayStation and make that something that was really big, especially in Europe? But the other thing is that with the game as a service, they could revive something within or make something new. And the thing that's most exciting to me about Sony London is their connection to the Getaway, and that anything that they do could potentially be connected to that game, because that's an IP that people kind of long for. And I think that that third game for PS3 was obviously canceled. I feel like I always wanted to see that come back. And what Sony doesn't have is a GTA-like game. They never have. The Getaway wasn't really that. The Getaway was like ostensibly that, but you were going from location to location kind of automatically. So I don't know what the hell they're going to do. What do you think about this news that they're hiring? And this, by the way, isn't sleuth work. They are being open about this. They're saying we are making a new team at Sony London. We are hiring all of these positions. We are making a game as a service. So these are not, prognostications.
So Sony London has made technically what you would call a game as a service many years ago on PlayStation 3 called PlayStation Home. And I'm wondering if that could be it, because we've seen rumors about PlayStation Home coming back. PlayStation is working on a new VR headset. And right now, it feels like the current arms race, whether or not you think it's valid or not, is this idea of the metaverse. And you see Facebook aggressively, now Meta aggressively doing this and creating their own metaverse, and PlayStation is the other biggest player in the VR space, and they have a new VR headset coming out. And I think that overall, more and more you see VR pushing social aspects. That's at least Meta's angle right now, is VR is social. VR is how you connect with people and go places virtually in the metaverse. And you have to imagine that Sony is watching that and thinking about it. And also the fact that they were many years ahead of the game when it comes to this idea of a virtual online place where you go and hang out and buy stuff or whatever, go to concerts, something, whatever. So I don't know. I didn't look at the hiring specifics, because you'd have to imagine that there would be some VR related stuff. But I mean, Sony London did make what is it? Blood and Truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have VR chops there as well. I don't know. I'm not saying this. I'm not marking this as this is going to happen. I think PlayStation Home is going to happen again. I think they will bring it back, particularly for VR. Is this that project? I don't know, but a lot of the writing is on the wall here. So
yeah, really good poll. PlayStation Home is always kind of dwelling in the back of my mind about, that was one of the rare PlayStation products that was very ahead of its time, and was kind of stuck in between this really gimped Second Life situation and this vision of the future that was maybe all too accurate. And so I think I recall that they re-upped the Home trademark in the last couple of years, I think. So maybe that has something to do with it. That's a very good poll, Dustin. Chris, what do you think is going on at London?
I think that's possible. I don't think this new studio is for that though. I think it's more likely that if PlayStation Home is to return in any real way, shape, or form, it's been in the process of doing so for a while now. If this headset is going to launch anytime soon, then this thing needs to be ready, and there's no way they're just starting that now. So this could be something alternative. This might actually be just this could potentially be a proper project that's even beyond it, or maybe something supplementary to it. Maybe something that is an experience they're trying to nail, and they in terms of having this kind of like weird VR social space that they're not quite nailing, and maybe they need like a sub team to do it. God, the term metaverse just get like when you said it, like I had like an immediate migraine. Like I experienced every headache I ever had in my life in like 3 seconds. Because you guys see that video of Kristen Bell advertising the Facebook one, or it's called like Horizon.
Oh, Horizon's
like,
right.
And she's like, "Look, the oceans are rising, but not in here.
Right.
Have you Googled the Louisiana shoreline recently? It's just very scary. Nobody has legs. It's creepy. But I think whenever the indication that they re-up the trademark is in my opinion enough. I know that typically doesn't mean anything, but given again the refocus on VR, the understanding that this is going to become like a bigger thing, the understanding that they're working on a VR headset again, I don't think those are coincidences. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a successor to PlayStation Home, and I do think that's what's happening. But I think this is just bolstering the team to get more work done. Probably because they're in like some form of crunch. Not like drastic, but I assume it's like, hey, Facebook's moving. All these companies are moving. There's metaverse shit all over the place. We gotta batten down the hatches. So that's what I think is happening.
Well, it's important to note too that PlayStation Home is a shell, and that it needs content. And
Right.
London made the old shell, but they weren't making actually much of the content that was coming to PlayStation now. There were PlayStation Home. There were studios that were made just to do that kind of stuff. And yeah, so it could be that you need to kind of have the architecture and the structure, and then you actually need to have reasons to go. And that's a whole nother thing. And they were ahead of their time. I mean, I wasn't into it at all, but we used to cover it at IGN. There were like games that were uploaded you can only play on PlayStation now. You'd like go up to an arcade cabinet and play it as your avatar, and you could like go interact with people and go to like bowling alleys and do all this weird shit. I don't know. It wasn't. Yeah. I'm not into that stuff, but I can get why people were, and we'll see if it rises again. All right, number 6, more hiring news. In June of 2021, we reported on one of a series of second-party deals Sony announced throughout the year. This particular project was slated to come from a new team called Deviation, who would be working on a AAA all-new IP for PlayStation as a second party, or in other words, a team working on a game funded by Sony that it will own, though it doesn't own the team itself. Sony, of course, regularly incubates second-party teams and buys them outright if they like the outcome. This was the case for the likes of Sucker Punch, Naughty Dog, Insomniac, Bend, Housemarque, Bluepoint, and others. Deviation, however, is at the very start of its journey, with its unknown game only entering full production in the last few months. But it appears things are already scaling up. Deviation, located in LA, is opening a second team in Canada. Word comes by way of LinkedIn, which shows 26 open positions at the time of recording, including many at this will-be Canadian satellite. While it's unclear what Deviation is building for PlayStation 5, it's almost certainly an online-centered FPS. The team's founders, Jason Blundell and Dave Anthony, both come from Treyarch, where Blundell acted as producer and Anthony as director on multiple Black Ops games. I think this one kind of speaks for itself, Chris, but I'm curious what you think. You think we're getting like a military bro shooter out of Deviation games? It seems like that would probably be the case.
Yeah, I think so. Either way, we're getting an FPS, certainly, which is important. They need that. But the nature, like what do you consider a bro shooter? Like a
well, like Call of Duty,
like a modern military, like
modern
kind of
military
like
shooter. Yeah.
I wouldn't, because you say that, but I think my first thought is at least in the PlayStation ecosystem is like SOCOM, and I don't really consider SOCOM like a bro shooter. You know what I mean? Even though it is like military and like very serious military. But man, I don't know this. I don't know what to say about this, because I had thought I guess I just like had it so affirmed in my head that Guerrilla was working on something first person.
Well,
and I don't know if they would. What up?
Well, I was gonna say I think there are multiple teams are working on first person shooters.
Oh, you think so?
I think so. Yeah. I would imagine Guerrilla is making another game. We just don't know what it is.
Right.
It's not the game that Firesprite's making. Again, this is a bait and switch kind of situation. Same thing with like Fallout 76. Same thing, right? Not made by Bethesda Game Studios. So no, I think I'm not confused by it at all. I think that they are making an FPS, but I wonder, Dustin, if you think that, I mean, what does it mean that they're already opening another satellite? I think there are two reasons why you would do this in Canada. One is to tap into the very vibrant game development community there, but also there's significant tax breaks and loans you can get. I'm not sure if Sony would be eligible for that, but another studio would be eligible for that kind of stuff. So the devil's advocate in me says like, well, you tap into Canada for other reasons too, but that they're opening a second team. Remember, this team just formed and they have Sony's money to play with, but we don't even know what they're doing. So it says something significant about their progress or about what they're working on that the Sony's bullish enough to give them more.
Right. I was trying to remember because I thought Deviation Games, where do I remember that? Obviously, we've talked about it, but I remembered there was that weird interview with Keeley for Summer Game Fest where the two guys were on stage wearing the Deviation gear and they say, we're really excited. We can't tell you anything, but you should be excited about it, which I don't know, maybe we talk about different things like that being for purely hiring reasons to let people know that they exist and that they're looking for help or whatever. But just a really strange moment on stage that never happens in the games industry, any kind of strange on stage moments, but
not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. Yeah. But now we just have strange streams, which are maybe more awkward. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But yeah, the tapping into the Canadian game dev scene, I think, makes a lot of sense. And with opening multiple teams, you have to wonder at some point that Sony wants more support teams as well to be able to support these massive projects so they can remake The Last of Us a third time in a few years' time. So maybe that's part of it also. And that's kind of an interesting idea to have a team that could do support work and do its own IP at the same time through multiple studios. But I don't know, maybe that makes no sense at all. But I think investing in the Canadian dev scene, I think, makes a lot of sense. There's so much talent there just because of the sheer amount of teams that are there. So having at least some kind of presence there is a wise, forward-thinking decision.
Well, that's why we were saying with Haven too, which is Jade Raymond's team.
Right.
They're in Canada, and that's the first time that Sony has really worked with a Canadian team in a second-party capacity since its work with United Front way back in the day on things like Mod Nation and Little Big Planet karting. So it's good to be back in that space. There's a lot of talent up there. And we'll see what happens. Now, Dustin, this next one's for you, number 7. Eagerly anticipated From Software action RPG Elden Ring has gone gold, indicating that it's ready for physical production and publishing. Set for release on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on February 25th, Elden Ring is published by Bandai Namco, which of course also works closely with FromSoft on its popular Dark Souls franchise. Announced at E3 2019 and in development since 2017, Elden Ring is directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, director of Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, and Sekiro. The game's lore is in part from George R.R. Martin, famous for the books which HBO based its smash hit series Game of Thrones upon. Word of the game going gold comes alongside information that the adventure is slated to take some 30 hours, though it is the first open world game as such From Software has produced in the Souls style and will undoubtedly be skill dependent, as all Miyazaki games are. Dustin, how do you feel? We are less than a month away now. Game's gold. It's going to make it, and it must be very exciting for you.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited. And 30 hours, I think, makes sense to me. I'm curious whether that's 30 hours for a general playthrough or a complete playthrough. But either way, even if it takes 30 hours to do everything, I'm fine with that. I'm sure I'm guessing that wouldn't be the case. But overall, I'm getting really excited. I'm starting to get a little weary because I'm sure that copies will be either press copies or leaked copies are going to start showing up in the next few weeks. And I really, in particular, want to avoid as much as I can now going forward, just because there's something special about Souls games and From Software games when the first time you experience a boss, and sometimes they show up when you do not expect it. And these are really memorable moments. And so I just don't want to see that. I want to have I have expectations of the game itself, but I don't want to know something's coming or whatever. I want to go in as fresh as I possibly can. And so I'm very excited. We talk about not pre-ordering, but I knew that special edition, which I'm pretty sure is already sold out. I did pre-order that because I wanted the statue. So
there's nothing wrong with that. I think if you're really excited about a product,
Yeah. So I have that. I specifically pre-ordered Best Buy because there's something about Best Buy that they send out special editions early. Sometimes both of my Persona special editions, I got like the Friday before a Tuesday. So who knows? I'm like crossing my fingers, but if not, I've considered when the day comes, if it's like the package doesn't arrive, do I buy it digitally on PC and then have the PlayStation 4 version? Because I'm probably going to play it both places, like once for my stream and once for myself. So just a lot to consider. Big time for me and the From Software family out there.
Are you excited at all, Chris? Now that we're close.
Yeah, no, I am. I view this very similarly to the way I view Horizon, where I don't need to see any more of it. I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's gonna be fun, man. Like it looks really cool, and I'm happy about it because I just like, specifically, like my experience with Sekiro was just so good, and I really liked Sekiro, and just the feeling of verticality that was there seems to be here as well. And I'm just really looking forward to it, but I'm not salivating. I'm not like waiting to see more of it. And I do kind of agree with Dustin, where you don't want to rob yourself of the surprise of these kinds of games.
Right, definitely not.
Just it's the kind of the whole point in a lot of ways, is to kind of like be caught off guard and sort of learn on your feet. If you watch like a whole playthrough of something, especially something so specific like a Soulsborne type game, where this is the boss and these are their attack patterns, and then you play it, it's like you're not gonna know how to beat it, but I feel like a lot of the experience is gone. So I'm looking forward to it.
Right on.
But I don't need to see anymore.
I feel that way about just games generally speaking. I haven't seen almost anything from Horizon 2 or whatever, Forbidden West.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going in totally blind pretty much, except for like the first trailer and maybe a little bit of gameplay that I saw after that. But yeah, I'm the same way. Once I get a vibe for a game, I'm really hesitant to see any more. I don't understand people that are excited for, to each his own, but that are excited for games that watch every trailer, every gameplay demo, every walkthrough, it's like, what the fuck are you doing?
I've done it for multiplayer stuff.
Well, that's different, I think. But I think that's even experiential too, where you're kind of ruining it a little bit for yourself there too. But in terms of story-driven stuff, I don't want to see anything from anything when I'm
for sure. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. All right, let's see what's next here on our list. Number 8. This was a weird one. Out of nowhere comes word that dormant FPS franchise Crysis, with a Y, is coming back with a 4th entry. The source is the developer/publisher Crytek itself, which announced the untitled 4th Crysis game in a blog post. There aren't many details, it's early in development, but that it's happening at all is a bit of a surprise. German studio Crytek, founded in 1999, is actually the creator of the Far Cry franchise. It was its first title, launched on PC in 2004 and published by Ubisoft, but at that point the team opted to go a different way, signing with Electronic Arts for a trio of FPS games. The original Crysis, which came to PC in 2007, was at the time considered the benchmark for graphical beauty. It came to PS3 in 2011 and PS4 in 2020. Crysis 2 followed in 2011 and Crysis 3 in 2013. At this point, Crytek began working on a series of different titles: the free-to-play game Warface, the Xbox One 2013 launch game Rise, Son of Rome, the well-liked 2016 PSVR game Robinson: The Journey, and perhaps most notably 2019's Hunt Showdown, the multiplayer FPS that came to PS4 in 2020. However, Crysis's return has been imperiled by corporate chaos and seeming overexpansion, and its once formidable internal CryEngine has largely become an afterthought. The only notable franchise that uses it on console is CI Games with its Sniper Ghost Warrior series. Crytek's an interesting studio. Do you guys remember when they stopped paying their employees? Do you
I was going to
remember
bring that up.
Yeah.
Quite a ride.
They founded like Crytek UK, and then they made it Dam Buster Studios. Those are the guys that made the Homefront sequel that took place in Philadelphia. And they remember, Dustin, it was like there were like weeks where they just weren't paying anyone. And there's something super shady about Crytek. I just don't know what it is. I do believe that they make some of their money off of military contracts, which are kind of secretive.
Oh yeah.
And might have to do more with CryEngine, but they don't really make games anymore. So Hunt is kind of like their platform, and Crysis coming back. I've never been a huge fan of Crysis. I platinumed the first Crysis game. It is beautiful. I remember that being so stunning when that game came out. I remember Dan Adams at IGN, who was running PC coverage at the time, had it running on whatever sophisticated PC in 2007, and we were like, oh my God, look at this thing. And now you look at it and it's fine. But Crytek does have a special place for me because Far Cry comes from them. I often wonder what would have happened to Far Cry if they stuck with it, or what would have happened to the studio if Far Cry continued, because Far Cry is huge, and I don't even think knows that Crytek made Far Cry. I don't think that's even something that a lot of people realize. So, Dustin, let's go to you first. How are you feeling about Crysis 4?
Something very important to point out about this reveal of Crysis 4 is that this is yet again another game from the NVIDIA leak. Confirmed.
Yes. Right. True enough.
I feel like we can safely say that whatever games are on that leak are legit. I mean, we've already concluded that over the last few months, but just every time another check on this list, it's like, man. So, Colin, look forward to that Final Fantasy Tactics remaster.
I will. Thank you.
But overall, they're in a weird spot, like you said. Right now, Hunt Showdown is an interesting title in that the people that play that game really, really love it, and they are outspoken about how great it is. And I think it's a really unique take on. I don't even know if you can really call it battle royale. It has some of those qualities in that you're up against it's team based and it's a huge map, but you're going and you're hunting monsters and stuff like that. It's a really, really cool game. Not for everybody, but in some ways, I think that they've been slow to. I don't think it has crossplay, which I think has hurt it. It doesn't. I don't think it has a PS5 version of it yet. I think that maybe it would be suited for a free to play model. It's hard to convince some. It's a niche game that's not like other battle royale games or shooters. So if you want to play it with someone, you got to convince someone to buy it. And so obviously some products are worth money, but it sometimes makes sense for something like that to be free to play. So Crysis 4, I feel like in some ways too, this game is obvious just in the way that they've been remastering the series so far. It felt like a build up to something like this. So I've never played any of them outside of using the first Crysis as a benchmark for PCs many years ago at this point. But I hope it does well for them after, like you said, it sounds like a hellish decade at this point for that studio. At least the last 5 years have not necessarily been so hot.
Yeah, I want to say you're right. I was thinking too, I platinumed Crysis 2 as well, but I don't think I even played Crysis 3. Chris, what's your experience with Crysis? Did you play those games?
Yeah, I played a little bit of Crysis 2. I remember back when it was like fresh.
Well, that's because it came to console before the original Crysis, I believe, or around the same time, which was weird.
Yeah. I remember it was 2011, and I remember it was there was a demo available, and I remember I think I had. Did I have GameFly? I might not. I can't remember how I got it, but I borrowed Crysis 2 and I played it, and I played some of the multi. It was fun. Like I enjoyed it, but it didn't stick with me in any profound capacity. It is cool to see a fourth entry in a series that is pretty important, I think, to the history of, like, I mean, you can't talk about what was the meme back in the day? It's like, oh yeah, but can it run Crysis? You know, that's pretty huge. That's a pretty big thing to have as like a well-known part of your series, that it was just like this thing that broke people's machines for so long. But this comes across as weird to me because I was under the impression that Hunt Showdown isn't like the most accessible thing. It's very, very intense. It's very, very, very competitive. It's very like that's not a battle royale game that you play in the living room with your friends around you, like laughing and talking about, I don't know, some stupid experience you had. That's like a game that you play with really, really good headphones. You like use audio to your advantage, like very, very much. Like you have to pay attention. It's very intense. It's not like a Fortnite. It's not like a PUBG. It's very intricately designed. And I was under the impression that was actually doing pretty well for them, even if it wasn't necessarily reaching the highest possible audience. So to see them kind of fold back into making Crysis again, I don't want to say it comes across as desperate because that sounds mean, but that's kind of the hunch I'm getting, where like, hey, that series we had that was like really famous, we need to do that again because we need something. That's what it comes across as.
Yeah, they could.
I don't know if that's true, but
I was going to say the exact opposite could also be true, which is that we make this money off a Hunt. We should reinvest it in bringing Crysis back.
maybe.
I'm kind of curious. I don't really know who owns Crysis. EA published those games, but I think Crysis was later published by Crytek itself. So there's some weird shit there too. I wonder who's publishing it, if they're publishing it themselves. There are a few things. I think it could be, to Dustin's point too, Crysis 4 was basically confirmed already. So you might as well just say something at some point. Yeah. But for people that like their little gaming history things, we were talking earlier about some other stuff with PlayStation Home. We were talking about Activision and EA fighting. Go back and read about Crytek when they weren't paying their employees. It's good shit. All right. Number 9. I wanted to read this one. I thought this was interesting. You guys won't care, but PlayStation nerds out there might remember. Publisher / developer / storefront proprietor / whatever, Epic Games, has quietly revealed that it bought a new team for its own first party, and it's actually a team relevant to older school PlayStation fans. In a short blog post, Epic announced that it acquired a Polish team, an expansion of Epic's brand, but it's not just any team. As noted, quote, the work that they're doing now, this work is being led by a small, talented team who have joined Epic from Plastic, the studio behind games such as Bound, Datura, and Linger in Shadows. They will collaborate closely with the Epic Games publishing team that helps studios bring their creative visions to players around the world, end quote. Now, if those 3 games are itching something in your head, it's because all 3 of those titles were PlayStation-published second-party PSN exclusives, 2 on PS3 and 1 on PS4. Indeed, 2 of those games, Linger in Shadows and Datura, aren't so much games as they are what are called demo scene games. Linger in Shadows came to PS3 via PSN in 2008, while Datura followed in 2012. Finally, the team released its most game-like title, Bound, on PS4 in 2016. People might remember that's the game where he plays the dancer.
Right. I totally forgot about that game.
Which was produced at Santa Monica Studio. What Epic plans to do with this unusual talent remains to be seen, though it's not the company's first foray into Poland. You may recall that it once owned People Can Fly, the team most recently behind Outriders, which was from 2012 through 2015, known as Epic Games Poland. Not much to say here other than that I didn't see anyone reporting on this, and Plastic was one of the very first outside teams to support PSN. Linger in Shadows was, I don't know, you can still buy it on PS3, but it's a very weird, like it's a demo. It's just like you watch it, basically. Mm-hmm. And then Datura, I really loved Datura, actually. The idea behind it anyway. It was like it was almost like a proto walking simulator. And I remember going to an event at Santa Monica to play it, and they had, it was really cool. It was before PSVR or anything. They had like a headset, and they literally duct taped PlayStation Move controllers to it like this, with the orbs facing out. And they were trying to play around with it so that you move your head and the screen kind of moved around. Like they were really doing interesting stuff. And then I actually wasn't crazy about Bound. I remember playing it when it came out and being like, that was their attempt to make a game. And some people really liked it, and it's super unique, but it was one of those games that probably sold no copies. Like I can't imagine how badly that game did. And that was one of the last games Sony Santa Monica ever made out of XDev, that when they went back internal with that. So anyway, just wanted to give a shout out to Plastic. I remember you guys. Number 10, We often make fun of Dreams, but the PS4-centric game building suite from Sony-owned team Media Molecule. But when something cool happens over there, we should acknowledge it. Website Deadline, focused on film and TV, reports that Sony Pictures has acquired global rights to an animated movie called A Winter's Journey. This is notable because A Winter's Journey was built entirely on Dreams. Now, Media Molecule has long promised amazing things on Dreams, and amazing things can no doubt be achieved, though they rarely are. According to Deadline, the animated short, quote, is an adaptation of Franz Schubert's timeless masterpiece, Winterreise. It's German. I don't really know how to say it. The most performed classical it says Sony, most classical song cycle in the world, unquote. It was created by the same team behind the 2017 Polish animated film Loving Vincent, which made some $40 million at the box office. Dreams, which was in development as far back as 2011 and 2012, was originally supposed to launch in 2016 and then 2017 and then 2018 before going into so-called early access on PS4 in 2019. It was released fully in 2020. While beloved by critics and winner of many awards, including from DICE and BAFTA, Dreams has nonetheless been somewhat of an albatross. With a tiny player base, many frustrated that for a decade now, Media Molecule hasn't released a game of its own. Its last console game was 2011's Little Big Planet, while it also brought Tearaway to Vita in 2013. What else it may be up to at this point, if anything, remains to be seen. Dominic Scala wrote in and said, hey guys, it seems like stories about Dreams are becoming more common, with a recent and arguably its biggest story being about its use to create CG environments for an upcoming Sony movie. Add that to the first-person Jurassic Park game a user has been working on and has received some recent social media circulation, as well as a number of mostly unknown, though impressive projects that are gaining some fans. With that, is Dreams somewhat of a secret weapon for Sony? Obviously, it's not an answer to Microsoft's purchases, but I feel like Dreams could be a unique way for Sony to tap into new talent without having to actually look for it. If this game helps to generate even a handful of indie or A-tier games or design work for movies or shows, then they have helped create their own organic pipeline for new content and IP. Just imagine how this potential could be multiplied if they ported Dreams to PC. Chris, you say this a lot, but that's all well and good, but it doesn't seem like they really have a plan for that. Dreams just exists. Yeah. It's just there. And I'm telling you, no one is really playing Dreams. It's cool that things are going on there, but if they can't make people go there, it doesn't matter what happens. And this is a cool story I wanted to acknowledge, but at the same time, Sony Pictures is the one that's picking it up. It's not like there was a bidding war for this thing that was made on Dreams, no disrespect to those guys. I'm sure it's very cool, but what do you make of Dreams, this kind of story and its potential future? I know very much linked to PC, as you feel.
Yeah, to put the fucking thing on PC. Like to me, it's just, I don't know what they're doing. Like to me, look, Dreams is interesting. It's not a game. It's not something that we typically would expect from a studio, especially in a first party, especially in the games industry. It's not what we would expect. There was no way in hell that this was going to be this runaway hit with millions of players. No way. There was just no reality where that was going to happen. But how I see it is the same way that I see like Adobe, where just put your platform that you've created, it's niche, it's interesting, it's cool, but it's not accessible, at least to this market. Put that on a platform where people can really take advantage of it. Let people export, because without, like, I've been curious about Dreams for a long time. Like, it actually is really appealing to me. And if it was on PC, I would probably genuinely start fucking around with it in a genuinely meaningful way, especially if I could export from there. And even if that came with like a stipulation where, hey, you have to go through Sony, like whatever. But I just don't see the point in this thing if they're so. Part of me feels like they wanted to do this and then they did it, and now they kind of have to almost like they're self-sabotaging to maybe be like, maybe we can move on to something else. And there's like, no, we got to stay. I feel like there's like this really massive conflict in the studio as to what they should be doing, because it makes no sense to me that they would have all of these, no pun intended, all of these dreams for this thing. This thing's going to create amazing things. It's going to do incredible stuff. It's going to be like unlike anything anyone's ever seen before. And we're going to lock it to PlayStation in a time where Uncharted, God of War, and Horizon are on PC. It makes no sense that Dreams is not on PC right now. It makes absolutely zero sense. And the fact that it isn't is like a massive breakdown in communication or a massive failure of management of that studio, quite frankly. Like it's baffling to me.
I think
because it's so obvious. Am I crazy?
No, you're not.
It's obvious this thing needs to be on PC.
You're not crazy, but I also think that it is obvious that the studio is mismanaged. I don't know what is going on over there. I just don't get it. I don't know what the game is. At this point, if you don't count Tearaway, and you really shouldn't because it was made by a team of like 20 people at Media Molecule on the side, they haven't released a game on console in 11 years. Like a retail game in 11 years. And that's a long ass time. And I don't know why they think that Dreams is what's worth the focus on. That's why, Dustin, I feel like certainly Media Molecule must be working on something, right? Like, I don't know. Certainly, I wonder when I watch these state of play sometimes when that pink logo is going to pop up on the screen and they're going to be making something. And it's not going to be Sackboy or anything like that. It'll be something else. And I feel like because they win awards, Dreams is like very critically acclaimed. It almost puts them in a place where it's like, well, I'm not saying you should get rid of them, but I'm saying like you can't shut a studio down that just won a BAFTA on their last game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it reaffirms. Like, I want to know what they're seeing that indicates that this was anything but a waste of time. And sorry.
You know what I'm sorry, it just came to mind. But you know what the biggest problem is too? It's like they've been working on this thing for so long, and it's not a game, and they've surely lost a lot of game dev talent working on.
Yeah,
this
who
thing,
would be passionate about working there? That's a really good point. Like, you work at Media Molecule for 10 years, you have nothing to show for it except for this set of tools. That's not exciting. Especially they made Little Big Planet. I know that that's not a game everyone likes. I certainly am not a fan of Little Big Planet, but that was a very important game for PlayStation 3, a very important series. And that series really helped solidify PSN specifically as a place. Yeah. And
Little Big Planet gave PlayStation its identity, I would argue, like really, really early on. Because I remember on the 360 side of things, I was kind of looking over at PlayStation and being like, not seeing a lot, because that was when Uncharted was, people liked the first Uncharted, but it was not Uncharted 2, like this was, and Sackboy was that mascot that was synonymous with PlayStation even early on. I had not played it at that point, but even I knew that it's like, oh, that's a pretty important title, that's a pretty important game and character. So it's just wild that it's been this long that they've put anything out, and that the last thing they put out was that game. That it was the sequel to their first game on PlayStation 3. Wild.
What do you think about this, Dustin?
I still think that the primary problem, and this goes along with really what Chris said, is that if you're a creative, don't invest your time learning Dreams. Invest your time in Unity, because there may be a payout for you where as an artist, you can sell what you've invested potentially thousands of hours in learning a tool. You can actually create something that can bring monetary value. And I understand that not every, creation needs to be in pursuit of a dollar. But if you're going to spend that much time learning something, and trust me, the tools for Dreams are extensive. It is a game engine, really. So this like I said, it's with Chris's point that they need to figure out an export feature, something that your time is not wasted learning using this tool. It doesn't make any sense to invest into Dreams right now. So it's clear that Dreams isn't dead from the Sony perspective. Obviously, there's this news here. I'm looking, and I think the most recent update was in November, where they added some template UI features along with a Media Molecule original thing that you can play. The game technically still doesn't have a proper PS5 version out. They did an update which allowed it to take advantage of PS5 hardware, kind of like how we saw with both Horizon, God of War, stuff like that. So it's nice they did that, but it's still kind of odd that they don't have a proper PS5 version of this game yet, if supposedly this still has a feature of some kind, or who knows. I think, Colin, the main thing is definitely that I don't know if Sony knows what to do with Dreams, and they spent so much money and so much time on it that they're not necessarily willing to give it up, but clearly there's some level of mismanagement or hesitation or something. But at this point, piss or get off the pot for real. Either let Media Molecule, which I don't know, I'm not saying let as in this is Sony's fault, but either commit and make Dreams a platform that is viable, or move on, because clearly you can't decide what it should be.
Yeah, but like the thing is, like, who do they have left there? Like, if you're a level designer, surely you don't work there anymore. Because what are you doing? There are no levels because there is no game. All they have are people. I mean, I would assume.
Yeah,
this is my assumption. Like, I'm sure there's probably somebody.
Maybe
there,
there's some like lazy
feels...
dude that's like, this is awesome. You know?
Yeah.
They're gonna beanbag chair.
Yeah.
But like, if you're like a level designer, or if you like build assets, like what are you doing if the game, if it's not a game, if the game is built around other people making their own assets, what the hell does an asset creator do? What does a level designer do? What are they doing? They've left. So like, I have to imagine that the team is just a lot of people who are like really good with tools and not much else, and then they can't make anything unless they explicitly hire for something. We're like, hey, we're gonna make this thing, and then maybe we can get some talent back. But until that casting call comes, for lack of a better term, I don't imagine that we're going to see anything out of Media Molecule for a while, and it just feels a little sad because I would much prefer them come back into this Sony, where there's so much potential given the competition from Game Pass. It's like Media Molecule is sitting right there, and they used to make the things that they make and made before stick out immensely from the AAA space that they have cultivated as of late. Not that AAA space is bad, but imagine a AAA PS5 game like Little Big Planet, from Media Molecule. It doesn't even need to be the same perspective. I just mean like the creativity and the tone and the difference and the just the voice that I wonder is if it's even there at this point.
Yeah, I don't think it is. It can't be, and I don't want to reduce it to the barest terms, but I look at studios like Gorilla Cambridge or Evolution, and I'm like, you know what? They got shut down, but at least they fucking released games. It's not to say Media Molecule is just doing whatever it wants, but certainly someone was selling a false good of sale at some point, right? Like at some point, someone bought into an idea that has clearly not worked out. And I remember this game was at the PS4 reveal.
Mm-hmm. Those are the dancing puppets, right?
Right.
And it's just like, what in the God's name are you guys doing over there? And my real hope, part of me has been real skeptical in the past of being too hard on them, because it's like, oh, well, they're so good, like maybe they'll come out with this Meteor and really make Dreams this thing and stuff, but that's clearly not going to happen. So, and I was saying that before it even came out. Remember, of course, that when they put Dreams into early access, they publicly said that they would only sell a certain amount of slots and would remove the game from sale when it reached that number of slots, and it never reached that number. They never removed it. So they did whatever their internal expectation was of like server load or how much feedback they wanted. They didn't even reach that level. This is just not a game for PlayStation. This is not something people want on PlayStation. It makes no sense on PlayStation. To Dustin's point, learn other engines, get yourself, if you're making stuff in Dreams, that's cool, but to what end? Why are you there? This is a self-defeating purpose for, I guess a good idea maybe, but ultimately something that didn't pan out. And then finally, number 11 is a wrap up. The PlayStation blog reports strategy RPG Crusader Kings 3 comes to PlayStation 5 on March 29th. Website Push Square reports long in development Platinum Games bullet hell title Sol Cresta finally comes to PlayStation 4 on February 22nd, while a sequel to the popular PSVR game The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners called Chapter 2 Retribution has been revealed, though it's unclear if it'll come to PSVR, PSVR 2, or potentially both. Additionally, Simulation 2 Point Campus comes to PS4 and PS5 on May 17th. Website Gamatsu reports Brick Breaker Breakout Recharge comes to PS4 and PS5 on February 10th. Cutting in real quick. They have a co-op mode that looks like they totally copied Twin Breaker. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Oh.
Adventure game Little Orpheus comes to PS4 and PS5 on March 1st. Story-driven action game Aztec Forgotten Gods, written by my friend Alexa Ray Correa, comes to PS4 and PS5 on March 10th. Adventure game Tasomachi Behind the Twilight, it's a fucking horrible name, comes to PlayStation 4 on April 28th. Roguelike Samurai Bringer and third-person shooter Deadly Dozen Reloaded come to PS4 at some point this spring. An old-school platformer revival, Cow the Kangaroo, which looks pretty awesome, actually, comes to PS4 and PS5 at some point this summer. Just looks like a fun 3D collectathon. The website also reveals that publisher Microids is making not one, not two, but 3 separate Garfield games, though target audiences and platforms have yet to be revealed. As reported by multiple sources, while Grand Theft Auto 3 Definitive Edition is just about to be pulled from PlayStation Now, it appears that its follow-up, Vice City, is coming shortly and will be on the service until early May. And finally, Battle Royale / wrestling game Rumbleverse, originally slated for PS4 and PS5 on February 15th, has been delayed indefinitely, apparently due to early access feedback. Okay, boys, as we always do, Sacred Symbols, we end with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Thank you so much for your kindness and support over there. Let's start with Ian. He says, hey, Punkheads, I'd like to get all of your feelings on the rumor floating around that the supposed upcoming Twisted Metal game isn't what it seems and that it may actually be a reboot of MotorStorm instead. David Jaffe planted the speculation in my head, and now I'm excited by the possibilities. 2018's Onrush was loaded with MotorStorm DNA. And was a fantastic game in its own right, but it failed to find commercial success. I find it hard to believe Sony would go the same route again. What do you think? Is it wishful thinking? Are these bogus rumors? Would you like to see more MotorStorm in the future? Dustin, let's go to you first. Apparently, David Jaffe has set this seed amiss in the ether that Twisted Metal is not really in development. I don't know if this is true or not. Of course, the story goes that Lucid was doing something and it was taken by Firesprite. We don't really know what's going on over there. I guess the real question right now is, should MotorStorm come back? We don't often hear about this Evolution-created arcade racing series that was actually quite popular. PlayStation 3 launch game in Europe, the original MotorStorm. Mm-hmm. So what do you make of this possibility that maybe instead of Twisted Metal, we would get MotorStorm instead, and that maybe the vehicular combat stuff is going to be handled by a free-to-play Destruction All-Stars?
First of all, I think we need to bring the trustworthiness of David Jaffe into question, just because the tweet will be out by the time this podcast is out. Lockmort put together a nice little video where there's this whole conversation about him saying he's more attractive than you. He's so out there. I don't know if he's just blazed out of his fucking mind or something. He accused me of bringing that up on the podcast.
Oh, interesting.
That was a write-in.
Yeah, David.
What's going on here?
Put down the
pipe.
Put down the hashish.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. I just want to get that out of the way. I don't know. MotorStorm is I know that this game has its fans, but I've never met one. I don't know. Like, I don't understand why MotorStorm would be the IP to bring back. I think it makes way more sense that for Twisted Metal overall, but I don't know. Colin, you were more obviously very into the PlayStation ecosystem during the time of MotorStorm. To me, when I think of MotorStorm, I think of playing PS3 at a demo kiosk in the early days before I could afford one or something like that. But I just don't feel this clamoring to bring back MotorStorm in particular. I mean, I'm sure that there were the fans of it out there, but it doesn't feel like a beloved thing.
MotorStorm's got a little bit of a stink on it. I think just because the studios that worked on it are both gone. Evolution and of course Big Big, which is probably one of the least known first party teams that Sony made. They worked only on PSP, and then they were shut down after their Vita game Little Deviants, of course. So I feel like, no, is there clamoring for MotorStorm? No. I think we have to understand that it's bigger in Europe. There are a lot of series that were bigger in Europe, and Europe is a mighty important territory for PlayStation's brand. In fact, it's maybe the most important place for PlayStation's brand. Xbox is much less competitive there, and all of that. But I think MotorStorm, the thing with MotorStorm is 2 things. Number one, what is it? It's an arcade racer, but to your point, is there a demand for that on PlayStation? I don't know about that. And the second thing, and I think it distracts from Gran Turismo in some way, which I also think Drive Club much more severely interfered with it. But those two games existing together made no sense ever. But it could be that Sony sees the writing on the wall and says, well, Destruction All-Stars, maybe that's a harbinger of things to come for this genre. If we want to stay in this space, maybe we move on to do something else. But Chris, the reason I don't necessarily think David is right here, although he could be, he might know more than I did. Of course, he created Twisted Metal, so he would have a lot more insight into this than I would. But the rumor is that Twisted Metal was taken from Lucid, given to Firesprite. And what's interesting to people, and I think what David is calling into account, is that Firesprite then hired the director of MotorStorm. So it's not like they hired a dude that works at Vehicular Combat. And of course, the game, VGC indicates that the game was taken away from Lucid because of Destruction All-Stars. So there's something is wrong here. I don't know who is wrong, but what do you think about the revival of MotorStorm, which we last saw, by the way? And I had to remember this. MotorStorm RC was actually the last game we got, which was a Vita game. But remember that when MotorStorm Apocalypse came out, it got fucked at market because the Fukushima, like the whole earthquake shit that happened in Japan, happened at the same exact time that the game was going to come out, and they just delayed it because they thought it would be disrespectful. Because of course, MotorStorm Apocalypse was about like the world just being destroyed around you while you were racing. So maybe a little too sensitive on Sony's part, but nonetheless, I think that similar to SOCOM, people feel that this series didn't really get a chance to either live or die on its own. So what would you like to see MotorStorm come back?
I'm gonna surprise you. I loved MotorStorm, like sincerely. Like I think MotorStorm is awesome, and the thing is there a demand for an arcade racer on PlayStation? I don't know, because there are so few arcade racers to even judge that. Like we have Forza Horizon, and maybe that's the only arcade racer that I've played in a while, and even that one's like a little bit safe. Like that's like, yeah, you're driving fast, but you can't. You're not. There's no. It's not exciting. It's not like I don't know how to put it. It's not like a Burnout type experience. It's not like a balls to the wall action oriented experience. And MotorStorm was just really, really cool. I do remember playing it at demo kiosks, and I do remember playing it on my I think my sister's boyfriend's PlayStation. She brought it over, and I just thought it was awesome, and I thought it looked great. I thought it played really, really well. And the fact that they just got shut down for this ridiculous like coincidence is how I feel about it.
Well, Drive Club was really the reason that Evolution got.
Oh, right.
MotorStorm was.
Oh yeah, that's right. They moved on. That's right. They moved on to Drive Club. That was stupid because that was a lot more. That I felt like that was a lot more redundant.
Oh,
to
definitely.
Gran Turismo.
Definitely. I said I finally told everyone about the Kazunori conversation I had at E3 where I asked him about how he felt about what he thought about Drive Club, and he was like, I don't think about Drive Club.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. I would like to see it come back. I don't know if there's necessarily a clamoring or a demand for it, but I just miss arcade racers. Like I feel like there's been this really sad lack. We used to get a lot of really, really cool racing games in the early to mid PS3 360 generation. Like there were these like really small games that nobody was really talking about, but were really cool games like Blur and Pure and these. Pure was like an ATV racer, and like Blur was like a kind of like a like an arcadey Tron kart racer, but in like real cars. It was really cool, and we had a lot of really cool experimentation in that genre. And then it quickly became like Sims. It's like Forza. Look at how the spoiler refracts in the sunlight, and it's just like, okay. And then you got Gran Turismo doing basically the same thing, just slightly differently. It's like, okay, it's real cool. And then Burnout went away, and then you didn't get games like Blur and Pure and these crazy action oriented racers with maybe you got like Split Second, and then that went away.
Yeah, good,
but but those were like really cool racing games. Those are the games that I like way, 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 way more than these like Sims that are just trying to like make sure you shift gears at the right time when you go up a hill. And I don't know. I would love to see something like MotorStorm back. It doesn't have to be MotorStorm, but just something chaotic and fun and not so grounded, man. We have so many grounded experience, especially on PlayStation. Jesus, there is like these incredible like actors, and like every pixel of their face is like performance capture.
The car's wife died. That's
yeah. You get to watch a Volkswagen Jetta carry its deceased daughter through the wasteland. No, I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I just miss the video gamey racing games that we used to get, and I preferred them more to these kind of more down to earth, realistic kind of sim style experiences that we've kind of settled into in AAA, both on PlayStation and in over on Xbox's side. I think there's room for chaos, and MotorStorm would be an excellent answer to that. But again, I don't know what the demand is, because we've not really had a chance to see these games perform in the market recently. There just haven't been any. I can't think of them.
Yeah, Ian wrote in, like when he wrote in, he brings up the only one I can think of, which was Onrush, which was made by Evolution, but like the remnants of Evolution after Sony got rid of them. Right. Remember, Codemasters came in and scooped them up. And
I didn't see any marketing.
Yeah, Onrush did okay, I think, but yeah, that was the end. So I don't know.
Maybe I'll pick it up.
Time to bring back Jetmoto.
Jetmoto,
make it happen.
What were those guys called? It was like San Diego Light and Power or something like that. Like they had a weird name.
Single Track.
Oh, Single Track. But there was another. That Single Track is what would become.
Sports?
No, Single Track is one of them. That would become. Single Track would ultimately become, I think, the remnants of Incognito, right, or the beginnings of Incognito. That Jackie would be able to tell me that. But there was another studio. I got to look this up now. That had like a really weird name.
While you find that,
Pacific Coast Power and Light.
Oh,
and they made Nuclear Strike. I remember that game, and Road Rash on N64. Yeah, that's an awesome name for a studio.
I'm looking at the Jetmoto Wikipedia, and what's really interesting is that I remember playing that game on PC many years ago, and the PC version was published by PlayStation.
Indeed. That's why I was telling people when they were like, well, Sony bought Psygnosis and they had no history with PlayStation. And I'm like, yeah, because PlayStation had no history. And then they proceeded to publish their games on every console. Wipeout was a PlayStation game and a PC game and an N64 game and so on. So just people not knowing their history. Sons of bitches. Old People Sex wrote in. Said sup, dorks. My question is regarding PSN sales. I rarely buy games at full price. I utilize the PSN wish list when a game goes on sale. That's on my list. I usually pick it up. Recently on the show, it was discussed how notoriously difficult Sony is to work with and how it can be hard to place your game on sale, which I find peculiar because I bought hundreds of games on sale and literally every week have wish list wanted games go on sale eventually. PSN has new sales at least every other week. Recently, I picked up Twin Breaker and Hybraxia, being that it was on sale. My question is, how was that process of getting your game to participate in the sale? Did you approach Sony or did they come to you first? Old People Sex, thank you for writing in. I wanted to just clarify this for people really quick. The reason why it's difficult with PlayStation and why they need to change and why I think they're working to change is that typically you would have to be invited to join sales. You can't go to PlayStation and say, I want from February 1st, the month of February, I want Hybraxia to be 50% off. Now I can go to Nintendo and do that. And we can go to Microsoft and do that. And we can go on Steam and do that. But with Sony, you don't have that level of control. So we can't put our games on sale on demand. They won't just put your games on sale without you approving it, but you're kind of like invited. And the reason that is because they have like a theme. Typically it's like, oh, we're doing PSN games. We're doing racing games. We're doing RPGs. It's annoying as shit. I understand why they do that though, but it is very glacial and backwards compared to the way everyone else does it. So I hope that is illuminating to you. Cody Jones wrote in and said, hey, Chris, Dustin, and Microsoft shareholder. I know we know vague details about Project Spartacus, but what do you think the likelihood is of everyone being disappointed and unhappy with the reveal? I feel like even if it does have good stuff, people will be generally disappointed by the lack of something such as a specific older title or PS3 games not being downloadable, for example, and it will be stuck in the shadow of Game Pass no matter what. Keep up the great work. This podcast is one of the highlights of my week. Dustin, let's go to you first. Cody's letter speaks to a fear that a lot of PlayStation fans seem to have, which is that Sony simply cannot compete with Game Pass and therefore shouldn't even subject themselves to trying. Seems like Cody is kind of speaking to that as well because it will be hard to please everyone. think this is possible, but I just don't even know what to expect, and therefore I have no real expectations of good or bad. Maybe we need more leaks or more information. I don't know, but how are you feeling about the possibility of Spartacus disappointing?
I think that it's a fair line of thought to be prepared to be disappointed with Sony and services, no doubt. But at the same time, you'd like to think that Sony knows what they're up against right now. And we just look at the way the stock market reacted. And so they know that the next time that they announce something and open their mouth, especially service related, it better be damn good. And so the thought of that pressure gets me, I don't want to say excited, but hopeful that they understand the gravity of the situation. I don't want to be too dramatic. We talked about the fact that Sony isn't over now with this Activision Blizzard deal or whatever. That's ridiculous. But it is a pivotal time in this industry. It's a pivotal time for Sony and the future of the platform under the face of a competitor like Microsoft with Game Pass. So I don't know. Of course, there's going to be disappointing aspects of it, no doubt. But I hope that they make something compelling. I don't really know what to say other than that, Colin. I think you're right that it's hard to even speculate on what it will be and what it will offer with just how little information we currently have.
What do you make of this, Chris? This idea of Spartacus potentially disappointing the audience. I find it hard to believe that Sony doesn't realize the gravity of the situation. But
right.
The one thing I will say is all the leaks are so funny, like the supposed leaks and we were actually making fun of them on Discord. If Sony does one thing very well, it's branding. And I can look at a PlayStation logo in 5 milliseconds and tell you if it's real or not. And the PlayStation Plus logo, when that leaked, that was clear that was real. Also, I want people to point out Sony is obsessed with the registered trademark logo, and they put it after everything. So leaks that don't have that are not very compelling either, or leaks in quotes. But Chris, what do you think about Spartacus and maybe being disappointed with it? Maybe it not being a wise battle for Sony to fight at all?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think I look at Nintendo, which I think, look, this is a matter of opinion, but I think it's fair to say there's a lot of favorable bias towards Nintendo in general. They've been around for a very, very long time. They've had a longer time than everybody else to kind of cultivate these nostalgic memories and these, entire identities that people have built themselves around, far longer than Microsoft and Sony have. And when they dropped their hands into the subscription model business, nobody liked it. Nobody was happy about it. Their online was terrible. They went in all backwards. Even the most recent situation with oh my man, there's like a couple of N64 titles that you have to pay like $50 or something, like some ridiculous price, and you're like, wow, that is terrible. So if Nintendo can come under fire for mismanaging of a service announcement, then surely Sony can. I think the biggest thing that they have to fear right now is how they message this thing, because the expectation everywhere is backwards compatibility everywhere, whether that's even part of the package or not. I know that they said it was. I know that there's like a bunch of information out there, but that needs to be handled perfectly. There was actually like this weird teaser that I think Sony Japan tweeted, and it was like 1, 2, 3, and it was all in Japanese or something, and everybody was like, "Are they teasing backwards compatibility? Oh my god!" And it was just some countdown to like some singer.
I was trying to tell people, like, they wouldn't announce something like that on a Sunday.
Yeah, that's all,
like
in Japanese. Yeah. Like it's just very, very strange. But people are clamoring for it, and they want that feature. As irrelevant as a lot of people suggest it is, it's something that people want, and if they can nail that in the way that Microsoft has, then that's good. If they fumble it like Nintendo has, that could be very, very bad. And I don't know. I think there's reason to believe that I want to remain hopeful, like I have to, in my heart of hearts, just convince myself that they know they can't fuck this up. But stranger things have happened. We have had $599. It's like it's like ingrained into my head, that exact audio clip. So they're capable of misreading the room. But I feel like what's at stake here is so huge that I don't think that's even. I don't think that's an option this time. I think we're going to get a good service. I think it's going to be cool. Will it offer the same things that Game Pass does? No, but I think it'll have enough identity and enough uniqueness to it that it will stand apart. I still think it's a losing war because they can't offer those like day and date. They can't throw around the money that Microsoft can. But the best thing that can come out of this service war is that they come out of it looking good, even if it's not necessarily by comparison.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think we don't have a lot of information, so it's hard to even.
Yeah. It's a lot very speculative.
Right. It's hard to even visualize like what it is. I can't even really visualize
what's
what
the UI look like. We don't know shit.
Grant Ritchie wrote in and said, hello, Microsoft shareholders. With recent news of PS5 theorized to outsell Series X and S 2-1, I'm wondering how those metrics are tallied. Do analysts use a database to track sales data or look at previous console sales trends? How can a 2-1 figure be theorized so soon into this generation? Any insight would be appreciated. Yeah, Grant, it's always good to keep a skeptical eye on claims made by prognosticators that do it for a living. Now, I think that the most famous example of this, for better or for worse, is Michael Pachter. And Michael Pachter is a really interesting dude. Knows games, he's learned. And the way that people like him operate in these different analysts' work is they're moneyed interest, they're investors. So they study very carefully the metrics. They study and model exactly how they think things are going to go. Sometimes they model them many thousands or hundreds of thousands of times and see how things play out. It's exactly like we're about to have a nor'easter here in the Northeast here in the United States. And it's interesting because nor'easters just appear. They're not storms that exist. They appear based on the climate, and we model it so that we predict its appearance. And so like it's not a movement moving across the United States like a normal storm. We know based on these characteristics of the atmosphere and the environment that this thing is forming where it is. And so I think it's a similar sort of situation with analysts and analysis, which is it's what we do on this show. I try to use the best information possible and try to use my experience and my expertise and my knowledge to dot my I's and cross my T's. And the only thing I'll say about analysts is while you should be skeptical, if they're giving advice that Sony is going to outsell Microsoft 2-1, then their shit shows that. They're not just saying that. They have sometimes millions and tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions involved in this stuff. So it's very serious to them. It's not fanboy stuff. But I don't know that it's very relevant to us either, because they're kind of examining things from a different perspective. But I appreciate you writing in, Grant. Thank you for doing so. Austin Miller wrote in and said, greetings, CDC, first time writing in. This one's for the weeb, Dustin. I wanted to bring up an angle about the whole Xbox versus PlayStation war that no one is really bringing up, and that is Sony's acquisitions of Crunchyroll and Funimation. Anime is quickly becoming mainstream, and I think Sony is sitting on an asymmetrical warfare nuke. Do you think Sony has plans to leverage these platforms and anime IP and studio relationships and integrate them more into their gaming offerings? Should Spartacus combine and bundle free Crunchyroll and Funimation Premium into their subscription? I haven't fully thought out all the ways Sony could leverage this stranglehold on anime they have against Xbox should they need to, but would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks. Dustin, you had brought up a good point on a recent episode that Sony essentially killed the fighting game genre on Xbox when they took Street Fighter. I don't necessarily think it's a good thing, but that's what Sony did for their business. This anime vertical that they've created is substantial. I don't even like anime, and I know that. I have to assume that this is going to be part of something to do with Spartacus. I don't know how you keep them apart and how you don't see that the Venn diagram between them is fairly substantial. So I'm wondering what you think as an anime, weeb expert nerd think of this.
Right. So just before I say anything, to be 100% clear, I don't know a ton about how the anime industry operates. So just keep that in mind. But what I will say overall is, to be totally fair, first of all, Sony buying Crunchyroll sucks. It sucks for the anime industry. And we there's been a lot of talk about monopolies and what is and what isn't, and Sony buying Crunchyroll and having both Crunchyroll and Funimation isn't technically a monopoly, but when it comes to anime in the West, particularly with simulcasts and stuff like that, it's pretty dang close. Like, I know Netflix licensed stuff and Amazon was for a little bit, and Hulu is kind of in the game as well, but nowhere near to the level of Crunchyroll and Funimation. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that as well, is that I'm not a fan of that either. Now, as far as them leveraging this mini monopoly, whatever you want to call it, I think that makes sense. Anime is mainstream at this point, no doubt. Like, I was at a mall in DC near my parents' house a few months ago, and just walking around the different storefronts, I thought, man, there's anime everywhere, either shirts or clothing, whatever, or books or toys, every skateboards, stuff like that. Anime really is become just a crazy level of mainstream success, that just thinking back now as a kid that one time in 6th grade, I was reading a manga, and a kid, a bully in my school, came up and asked me why I was reading that Chinese shit. And now, which is just funny that he was such a moron, but just thinking about now that the meteoric rise of anime. But so, yeah, I think it's clear that Sony should leverage these and incorporate it into the platform. I think that would make it desirable. Is it how did he phrase it here? An asymmetrical warfare nuke? I don't think so. I don't think people will look at Spartacus and be like, wow, well, it has Crunchyroll and Funimation. Look how much better it is than Game Pass. I don't think that's the case. And I don't know if it really has any effect as far as Austin mentions anime IP and studio relationships. Again, I'm not super familiar, but it seems like Bandai Namco really has a lot of those IP locked down.
Yeah, what was that one that just came out that sold surprisingly well?
They always sell Demon Slayer.
Demon Slayer, right?
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about these anime games, is that they're usually not horrible, but not great, but they sell incredibly well. So that would be kind of I've always wished that we could get some of this anime IP into really good studio hands. We saw the Yakuza devs make Fist of the North Star, which was really cool and a perfect match. And I would love to see more of that instead of these games that are just kind of haphazardly thrown out. And they're fine. They may appease the fans of those shows. It's a game that may have some callbacks or whatever, and have fine gameplay and whatever. But there's so much potential. I think of the marriage of Spider-Man and Insomniac. I'd love to see that happen with anime IP, but instead we're going to get more Star Wars. So I guess I'm alone in that one.
We did get Dragon Ball Fighters, which I thought
that's true. Yeah,
that sold really well.
There are some examples out there. I just feel like there's more, but
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think I covered as much as I could from Austin's question here, but I think they'll leverage it, but not necessarily to the effect that Austin may think.
Do you have anything to add, Chris, or should we move on?
Yeah, Mr. Japanese on your shirt. What do you got to add here, Chris?
This is a friend of mine's merch. I don't care. Okay?
Take it off right now.
Listen, I think I don't know. I don't know how they would leverage it, because I think Sony wants to be very careful here how they message not a response to Game Pass, but I guess a competitor to Game Pass. And if they're going to combine it with TV, like, I don't know if that's when Xbox Game Pass is all about the games, right? And you have this kind of history of like Sony and Microsoft specifically in the early early days of the Xbox One, where like Microsoft was like TV, you could put it your fucking cable box and shit. You could watch the Drew Carey show on your Xbox One, and Sony's just like, hey, play a video game, please. You know, that's messaging that's stuck around. Like even people, you know, it's much less so now because of Game Pass, because of just the sheer focus that has had. But for a long time, it was like Xbox was just kind of the secondary thing. And I don't know if necessarily you want to compete with an all games, all in service with, by the way, here's some TV, you know, like, by the way, here's some shows. I think they could maybe have some meaningful pull as like, hey, you know what? Here's what we'll do. Like you subscribe to Spartacus and then you get like a free month or 2 free months of, you know, something. Like I could see like cross promotion in that way. That could be really cool and beneficial. But I think you want to avoid tying those things together because it muddies the message of what Spartacus is. Unless that's the goal, to kind of look like it's not an answer to Game Pass, which is kind of the alternate question. If we all know it is, you know, but your average, I don't know, 10-year-old or mom or whatever is not going to know these things. They're not going to know the internal battles that go on in the industry. And they'll see this service that's like, hey, it's offering a little bit of TV, a little bit of games. It's not exactly this other thing. And that might actually be viewed a little bit more favorably because it doesn't look like it's a copy. It doesn't look like it's trying to do something that Sony is just not equipped to do. I could see both strategies here. But my opinion, I don't think they're going to like combine these things or leverage them in that way. What I think is most likely is this cross promotion thing, which is, you know, I think wise.
Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. Sony Pictures probably has a different set of goals as well.
Yeah.
But their One Sony initiative is obviously at the center of everything they do, and it took them a long time to get to that point. So we'll have to keep an eye on all of this. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It's interesting. It conflicts in my mind, this all-in attitude they have with anime while they're like real prude with their games, right? Compared to their competitors. Doesn't really make any sense.
It's very bizarre, yeah.
Finally, Sam Torstenbo wrote into us and said, look, Fat, I have concerns about the economic realities of Game Pass in the wake of Microsoft's recent activities. Now, this is an interesting question. And he puts it, I think, perfectly. He's a little dramatic at the end, but I want people to think about what he's saying here. Am I to understand, he says, that Microsoft spent a blasphemous sum of cash for all those studios, only to give away most new games for free with a monthly subscription? Isn't it true that Microsoft now runs enough teams to release a full-size game every month? Am I missing something? Or does Microsoft truly intend to deliver $60 worth of first-party content a month for less than $60 a month? Where will the money come from to continue funding these projects? And then he gets dramatic because he says, is this the Enron of gaming? No, I don't think it's the Enron of gaming. The thing is that this is a great question, and I don't see people looking to answer it because they can't, because no one knows what they're going to do. I've said this time and time again. There is zero chance, that Game Pass is profitable. Zero chance. And the more they acquire, the more they make, the more expensive it'll be to keep Game Pass going. There's no doubt that they're in the Game Pass business for the long haul. But when you have such a gratuitous amount of money, this is why I say that I don't really have a lot of respect for what Xbox is building, because they're just doing it with money. They're not doing it with like skill. It's just brute force. It is. And the outcome of it is something where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. It doesn't make any sense. And the only way it works is if they really reach this high threshold, this Netflix-like threshold, where remember, Netflix was losing billions of dollars a year for years. Just eating shit.
They only recently became profitable.
And the same thing, of course, with Amazon, different, but where these companies just eat shit for long periods of time. The thing about Microsoft is they can just draw money from Adam and give it to Mark. It's like whatever. They have all of this money coming in. And that's why I'm like, this is so bloated and big, and I don't know how the economics works. But the reality is that the way Microsoft will force the economics to work is going to hurt. I'm sorry, it just is. A lot of people are going to lose, whether it's certain game developers, certain publishers, certain subgenres and niches. And we'll go to you first, Chris, on this one. I'm deeply concerned about the economics of games. As a game developer, I think about our games and how much work we put into them, especially how much Barry puts into them. And I don't take any money. And that's how we're able to make the studio kind of work for now until maybe we get a bigger hit. And we're trying to make it work, but we're almost like breaking the rules in a way. I think about other studios that don't have a platform to sell their games, like Sacred Symbols. They don't have any notoriety and anything like that. And they're going to go out and say, like, will you spend $10 on my game? And someone's going to go, no, we want it on Game Pass. What do you think about this concern?
I don't know. I'm not a developer, so my understanding of the back end of this is fairly limited. But I mean, I've seen a lot of interviews with developers that say that they're pretty happy with the way things are. Whether that'll last or not is another question. But in the short term, it seems to be a pretty sweet deal. You make a game, and then like Microsoft needs content to feed their service, so they just give you a boatload of money, and then you've just instantly kind of you kind of made something work, even if you're not selling it pound for pound or a la carte. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I don't know how any of this shit works, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But I think if Netflix is capable of operating at a loss for as long as it has, Netflix has been around for how long? When was Netflix
2000
founded?
or
Like
late 90s, something like that? Yeah.
Late 90s? What the fuck?
1998, I want to say, something like that. Yeah.
Netflix founding. Yeah, wow.
Because it was in
1997. That's crazy.
It was in the famous thing is that I think in 2000 Blockbuster could have bought Netflix for $10 million.
Yeah, I remember that. Holy shit. What a sad man. That's got to be rough to wake up. But if they're capable of operating at a loss for like basically the majority of their life cycle and then eventually come to a profit, you have to imagine that such a case would be possible for any of these companies, especially Microsoft. And especially I would say the same thing of Amazon and Disney as well, just from the sheer wealth that they pull. And I don't know, you have Netflix shows like Squid Game, right? Which like that guy was trying to get that show made for 10 years or something. He was like shopping it around and because Netflix needs content, because Netflix is just operating in this way, they pulled it, and then that became like a huge thing. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of benefits to this structure. I feel like we get a lot of things that we otherwise wouldn't have gotten. I think that's a valid outlook. I do think there's reason for concern because for every Squid Game, there's probably like a million fucking, I don't know, videos of some guy falling down the stairs 8 times. Like it's just like very low effort stuff that is just made almost like to launder money.
Well, this is what I was just going to say, not to interrupt, is just that for all the hits that Netflix has, there's a website that tracks it all. They've canceled 75 series in that time.
Oh yeah.
So it's like they have so much money that you have any idea how much money that wastes when they're like, oh yeah, we're done with this shit after one season that we just spent $100 million on. And then you do that 75 times. That shows that that's why Microsoft's level of money and monetary interest in this is fucking everything up. And it's dangerous because Sony couldn't cancel 75 shows. They would be screwed if they canceled 75 games. I mean, that's just my major concern, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to predict where this is going to go. My feeling is though that this is just kind of always how it was going to go. If it wasn't going to be Microsoft, it was going to be somebody else. I'm thankful that it's not Tencent. Although it is Tencent for a lot of studios, Tencent's been like crawling under the door for a while now. So whether we like it or not, the future of this industry is in subscription. The future of it's the same thing with music. It's the same thing with movies and television. Nobody buys albums anymore, and that's sad for a lot of reasons. There's a nostalgia and there's a fondness that we have for those days, but those are over, and now we don't really think about that much. Really, a new album comes out on Spotify and we stream it and we like, that's good, and we enjoy it, and then that's it. And I feel like a similar future probably awaits us. in gaming, and I think it was just always going to come to a head like this. Frankly, I'm glad it took this long, because this could have happened way earlier. I feel like.
Do you have any?
Not the streaming aspect,
Sure.
obviously, because we don't have that tech yet. But
what do you think about these concerns, Dustin? The pricing concerns, and like again, I want to read what he says. Am I missing something, or does Microsoft truly intend to deliver $60 worth of first-party content a month for less than $60 a month? Where will the money come from to continue funding these projects? This is the asymmetric warfare that is going on right now.
Well, Colin, I mean, first of all, you idiot. You don't remember when Phil Spencer said it's sustainable? Duh.
Yeah, it's sustainable if you are
That's
Microsoft.
The number one thing that people always come back when you talk about profitability. Is they're like, well, look what Phil said. He said sustainable. It's like, that doesn't mean the same thing. Anyway, surely the price of Game Pass will go up. And without a doubt, the question, of course, is how much. I was looking, since I think Netflix is a fair comparison when we talk about business model or whatever. I mean, it's a different end product, with one being movies and games, but we can at least glean something from it, right? So in 2011, when Netflix, I believe that was when they launched, or, well, I don't know. I feel like it was earlier than that when they launched their the streaming version. But anyway, I'm looking at it
was like 2009 or 2010 on 360. I specifically remember that was like a thing, because they were in bed with Microsoft at that point, right? Because they had the 360 launch with the Netflix streaming.
Yeah, and then you had to get the disc for the other platforms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm looking at The Verge has a breakdown of their price increases over the years. So in 2011, you could get HD Netflix for $8. Now, for the same plan, it is $15.49. So we're looking at almost a double price over the course of 10 years. And that's for a plan that is HD, that is not 4K, which is now becoming the predominant screen in most people's homes. If you want the 4K plan, it is now $19.99 a month. So almost, I don't want to say the essential plan, but the plan that's going to be desirable to the most amount of people, depending on what kind of screen you have. So the price will definitely go up. I guess the question is how much, and then even then, let's say Game Pass price doubles, and let's say and we'll even go with Game Pass Ultimate, which is $15 a month. So let's say it's eventually $30. I mean, the line from Sam here still stands. Does Microsoft truly intend to deliver $60 worth of first-party content for less than $60 less than $30, or for $30 a month, right? It's still under. So it's really good question. You got to wonder if Microsoft is going to figure out other ways to monetize Game Pass, whether a tiered approach, maybe. Like, could you see a version of Game Pass where you get early access, Game Pass early access, where for an additional $5 or $10 a month, you get the new releases 4 days early, or 5 days early, a week early. I don't know, something like that.
That would be interesting to even go earlier. I don't know.
They already are doing
their whole business, though.
Yeah, they already do that, because that happened with Forza, right? This most recent Forza Horizon, where I think Ultimate, if you had Ultimate, you could play it early.
Right. So
I think the thing that's, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like the $60 worth thing, I think is interesting, because we talk a lot about what is a game worth, and $70, $60, whatever. But I feel like there's a lot of, especially in games, right? We walk out of a movie and we're like, yeah, they made the movie, whatever. And it's like, we either like it or we don't. We don't really feel much about like the price of that. But a game is different, where it's like, it's $60, man. Like, if I like that game, I'm gonna like it. If I hate it, I'm gonna feel real ripped off. Is the subjectivity of the worth of a game, person to person, is that a factor in this conversation? Like, when you talk about Far Cry, you're like, you've clearly gotten your money's worth out of Far Cry, right? Definitely. But I probably am never going to play it, because I don't think it's worth the money for me. It's worth zero to me, but it's worth, like, and that's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like that's part of this equation. I don't know exactly how, and I don't know exactly in what way it fits in, but I think that applies where, what was Sea of Thieves worth to the majority of people? Probably not much, but it's made a lot of money, that game, and it's had a lot of play. So it's like, I don't know. There's something here that I am not seeing for sure, because that's all back end stuff that I'm not privy to. But I think it's worth pointing out.
Fair enough. It's complex. As I said with Lily Mo, my studio, we want to get with Game Pass. Like, we want to know how it works, and we probably won't be able to talk about it, but it will give me at least some insight and background, because it's true. A lot of developers that are on it are talking it up, but I don't really read much into that. What are these guys? The earliest Game Pass partners are gonna be like, this fucking sucks. First of all, they probably got the best payments. They probably got really advantageous deals, and it might really work for them. But I don't understand how this is going to work. And I'm concerned about it. I'm also curious what the pickup will be on subscription services when they're more ubiquitously available, if most players even want that. People ask me like, oh, Colin, why'd you get Game Pass? Micah plays Xbox and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, Micah's a huge Xbox fan. She doesn't want Game Pass. She doesn't like it. She doesn't play it. She doesn't use it. She buys games. And so I wonder, like, are there many of those? I don't know. I don't know. I have no fucking idea. So we'll continue to track it. Sam, thank you for writing in. And thank you, boys. That's it. That's all we have for this episode of Sacred Symbols of PlayStation podcast. Chris, do you have any closing comments?
I had one earlier, but I forgot it.
Fair enough. Very good. That puts a period on it, I think. Dustin, closing comments.
I have a PSA and a personal statement. My PSA is, a lot of people ask us on a weekly basis, Dustin or Colin or Ben or whoever, how do I get into the Last Stand Discord? And I don't know if we've ever said on this show how to do it. So we're going to do it right now. Go to Google, search Patreon, connect Discord. You got to connect it, connect your account, and you'll automatically join our Discord. We can't just give you a link or something like that. It doesn't work that way. You need to have it verified. That's how we make sure that it's $5 and above patrons. So link your Discord to your Patreon, and you'll be good to go. I just feel like I wanted to put that out, because we get asked that. Like,
we do. I answer messages about that every day. Yeah. And we have more than 4,000 people in our Discord now, and that's an accurate number because we booted out all of the people that were lingering, that didn't pay anymore. Freeloaders, get out. Right. So more than 4,000 of you are in there in Discord. We have but I don't know, because I'm not in any other Discords, but we apparently have a very active Discord. So yeah, definitely.
My personal statement here is just that, I was hard on Chris for his shirt multiple times in this episode. And I realized upon reflection, maybe I'm feeling a little self-conscious about how bad Chris burned me during the Sacred Symbols Defining Duke episode. And even maybe further back to the live event. And honestly, it's a pretty cool shirt. And so I don't know if I'm ready to apologize to Chris, but I just want people to know that I'm reflective on the situation, myself. And I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of honor in being burned by Chris, but maybe it makes me sad at the same time. It's a lot of emotions going around right now. And so I just wanted to put that out there.
Fair enough. That was out of the blue. That was like a top rope kind of, we didn't expect that situation, so that was good. But I respect your stance. I appreciate your fear. And of course your time as well. And remember, live show, come see us. Yes. Richmond, Virginia, Sacred Symbols 200, the top 25 PlayStation 4 games ranked at the National, Saturday, April 30th. Snark Tank is opening. On sale early February, patrons only. We'll have all the posting and everything. You won't miss it, but prepare yourself, gird your loins. Prepare other things to do in Richmond and all the other places that you want to be in Virginia, beautiful state. And come down here to the South. That's a character. I use that language. You guys never heard that. I use that that's like my fake Southern man that lives in the South. That I always say that to Micah. I'm like, woman, that chicken. She's like, making chicken cutlets. I'd be like, woman, that chicken cutlet better be tender. That's my Southern. That's my Southern man.
That was a little sexy. This is Red Dead.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, rain's coming.
Xbox Game Pass.
Xbox Game Pass.
Now that's
what's that?
I don't understand this Xbox Game Pass. We don't play.
You can't argue the value proposition.
We don't play those games around these parts.
We're losing our fucking minds.
All right, my friends. Take care. See you next time. Goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.